My friend's toxic girlfriend literally tries to hijack my birthday by demanding that I go through with my plans for a party the day before my birthday instead of celebrating it on the day itself. But after dealing with this woman for far too long and dealing with her shenanigans and terrible attitude, I decided to put my foot down and say no, causing this woman to freak out on me in a way that truly showed her entitlement, which ended up being a fantastic thing because it set in motion a sequence of events where this woman was removed from my life pretty much forever. And if I consider the crap she put me through, this honestly is the best result I possibly could have asked for. Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I host a tabletop game on a semi-regular basis. Until a few months ago, that included someone who I will call Joe and his girlfriend who I will call Carrie. And before I go into what happened, let me just give you a little bit of background. My husband and I tried our best to be kind for Joe's sake, but Carrie is a difficult person. She thinks she is entitled to say and do whatever she wants, regardless of the consequences without any kind of comment. At one point, my husband said it's important to consider how our actions affect others, and she responded by saying, "That's your opinion." In the tabletop game we were playing, whenever we started strategizing, her character would get bored and wander off to get attention by doing plot derailing things, like breaking the law in front of the town guards. One way to ensure that she brought something up all the time was to say no. In fact, she often brought up playing at their house, which was like 30 minutes out of the way. She also convinced Joe to go on a divorce show with her, and no, they've never even been engaged, and then kept suggesting that my husband and I could also get on TV and make a few $100, and she couldn't understand why we weren't interested. Worst of all, she often made tone-deaf jokes about topics that multiple people in the room had some kind of issue with. It always made things incredibly awkward and very weird very fast. Now, Joe was never the most punctual person in the world, but Carrie magnified that 100%. They asked us to move the game to a weekday evening so Carrie could have the weekend for her occasional freelance work as a clown. But even with the move, they frequently canceled with little notice, often because Carrie had already planned something and forgot to put it on the calendar again. When they did show up, they could often be over an hour late, and this is always for very important reasons, like she wanted McDonald's instead of the pizza that we had already ordered. It became such an issue that we just moved the start time to later on, but naturally they just started arriving later as well. A couple weeks before my birthday, I texted the group saying that I had made plans for the weekends before and after the actual day, and I invited the group to join either. Joe and Carrie were going to be out of town both weekends, but at their suggestion, the group planned a low-key game night on my birthday, which was a Tuesday. Well, the Saturday before, Joe cancels, and this comes back to the fact that he just remembered he had concert tickets for that day, saying that he was so sorry. Carrie said it's not my fault I don't even like rock concerts, so let's move it to Monday. Now, as they know, my husband and I had limited to no reception over the weekend. So even if I had wanted to coordinate rescheduling, it was honestly just too late. I then wrote to them and I said, "I'm celebrating my birthday on the day I was born with whoever wants to join." Well, that Tuesday, another friend got sick and we ended up canceling the night altogether. For this and various more selfish, unrelated reasons, that week was really rough, and my husband and I decided to cancel our next game night, saying I was still feeling raw about everything and wasn't up for hanging out just yet. Now, everybody else said that they understood and that, "Oh, that's totally fine, take care." But Carrie asked if they could still bring me a present, and while I said I really do appreciate it, I also said I just need some space for the moment. Well, when I said that, she exploded on me. I get this lengthy text message about how she doesn't like the way I've been speaking to her. They had gotten the tickets months ago. It was an honest mistake, and acting like we've done something wrong is not okay. She said my text messages were aggressive and made her feel scolded, and that I should have sent her a personalized message if I had a problem, and that I have no right to have a problem anyways. At one point, I mentioned how deflating it can be to clean and prep a house only for people to cancel, so she said she would help out by hosting the game night at their house. Oh, and by the way, they'd like to come by really soon with the present. Like, this present got brought up a lot. Well, it was later revealed that Carrie literally used AI, like specifically ChatGPT, just to respond to me when we were having a conversation. And she defended this, like actually said she was right in doing this because she just wanted to make the conversation less emotional. Like, she literally showed the copy-pasted like stuff she had posted in the chat box where she had requested the computer to be like, "Okay, I need you to add in that I won't monitor her feelings. Go ahead and do that for me." Now, I've got to be honest, I really did try to smooth things over, but ultimately she decided to walk away from the game. She told Joe that she was going to show grace by stepping aside, just so he could maintain a friendship with us. All she asked was that he make it clear that he agrees that we're being unfair. She's done nothing wrong, the problem is with me, and that he was not going to tolerate our calling her rude or insensitive. Well, graceful as that was for her, our friendship with Joe was also ended pretty much the same day. and if I'm being completely honest, I don't regret it, and we haven't really looked back ever since. Yeah, this lady is super entitled, like holy crap. Talk about never taking accountability for anything you ever say or do. Not only did she not care about anybody but herself, but it almost seems like she went out of her way constantly just to try and like ruin other people's plans. Because holy crap, you know for a fact the only reason she wanted that game night played at their house was because she didn't want to drive 30 minutes to show up to your house. Not because they wanted to be a good host, it's because she was lazy. And honestly, if I'm playing like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, and I've got someone in my game who's acting like Carrie, it honestly is mind-numbing. It is so bad. Like, that is the worst person to deal with in my opinion, because they can literally destroy the plot. Like, I'm not even kidding. It is so frustrating to deal with. So I'm really glad that the original poster like stepped up and said, yeah, I'm absolutely going to put you in your place and I'm going to defend myself. And by the way, the original poster didn't do anything wrong. All they wanted to do was keep their birthday on the day that it was and not move it around because of Carrie's stupid decisions. And honestly, the only reason that Carrie blew up at you and Joe's friendship with you kind of dissolved is because you just didn't go along with their plans. Like, that's the only reason this happened. So if there's anyone to blame in this situation, it is Carrie and literally nobody else.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
An entitled jerk comes into my restaurant and starts acting incredibly weird towards me as I'm serving him, as it really seems like this guy was trying to rage bait me in some kind of way so that he would get a rise out of me by being the most annoying customer on planet Earth. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened the other day, but I'm thinking about it still, and it reminds me of how much I hate how people treat service workers. For reference, I work at a local sports bar as a server, a host, and expo, and this event occurred during a serving shift. It wasn't that busy of an afternoon because of all the snow still sticking around, but that was also normal for a Thursday afternoon anyways. So when these two people came in and wanted to be served at a table, but only wanted to make a to-go order instead of going through the host to do that, it wasn't that big of a deal. The host didn't really care that much anyways, and they're at a table, so I just served them. One of them made their to-go order and paid fast, but not long after I brought their bag, a man came in and sat with them. I will preface this by saying that I unfortunately have a resting jerk voice, but after working at the bar for 4 years, I've gotten to a point where it's surprising for customers and regulars that think my voice is always high-pitched and peppy. My coworkers think it's hilarious when I talk like that while answering the phones, but then immediately switch back to my actual voice that's much deeper once the call ends. However, with all the cold going around, I'm not sick in any way, but it has made my voice rough, so it's harder for me to change it for work. I'm doing my best, but I can't force it to go anything past like a slight lilt without it sounding gravelly and cracked. I asked him in as nice of a voice as I possibly could. Hey, how are you? What can I get for you? He then responds in this kind of voice that gives off as condescending, but I'm hoping he wasn't really meaning to. He says to me, I'd like to put in an order if that's fine with you. I then say to him, well, yeah, that's fine. What would you like? And still, in that same voice, it says, are you sure it's fine? You sound kind of reluctant. I stop for a second and I realize I probably still didn't sound good enough, but there's nothing I can do to try and fix it right now without sounding worse. So I just smiled and said, no, it's fine. That's just my voice. To which he let out a sigh and said, okay, well, I would like this sandwich to go, please. So I put his order in to go and checked on them now and then. And when I bring his to-go order out, he smiles at me and says, is that my food? I look at him and I say, it sure is. It's this sandwich. He then asks me, and you made it to go, right? And honestly, at that moment, I found that to be a weird question since it's literally directly in front of him. So I say to him, yeah, that's your order. He then circles back and says, all right, thank you. I'd like it for here now, so go do that for me. Now, here's the thing. Really listen to me now. I get the question sometimes by sit-in to-go people to make their order for here instead, and regular to-go people who do that too. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It is kind of weird sometimes, and it can be wasteful for some of the materials that we use, since they usually want it removed from the bag and boxes and put on plates instead. So obviously that stuff gets thrown away, but again, it's not a big deal, I get it. But truly, why are we going through this whole conversation and then ending it with you telling me to go do something for you like that? So I took it back and I got it for him. I asked him if he wanted anything else and he said that he was fine. I checked on the table now and then, and once he finished, I grabbed his plate and I asked him again if he wanted anything else. He then looked at me and said, no, I'm fine now, I'll take my check. To which I said, okay, I'll go get that for you. But then he stopped me suddenly and said, oh, actually, I want a coffee. So I went and got him that, and I asked again, do you need anything else? And just like before, he said he'll take the check. He then stopped me while I was leaving to get the check again and asked me to refill his tea as well. So I go over and I get that for him as well. And when I bring it back, he asked for the check again, and this time he doesn't stop me and just pays afterwards, thankfully. But this whole time, he never stopped doing something. It was like this halfway smile with the same almost condescending seeming tone. It was honestly a weird experience that I don't think I'm gonna forget anytime soon. Yeah, this guy was being a massive jerk. He thought you were in some kind of bad mood, and so he was trying to rattle your cage, and that is so annoying. This is the same mentality of a high schooler where they're like, oh, you're so mad right now. Why are you angry? Look at you. I can hear it in your voice. When it's like, dude, I'm just trying to get your order ready. Like, what's going on right now? Either order and get something or get out. Like, why are you making my life harder? So yeah, that guy's a massive jerk, but I think you handled it really well. You didn't let him shake you, and that, in my opinion, is a big deal. My friend is saying that I need to stick around for an extra 3.5 hours just to meet up for a dinner that's going to be in the city that I work in. But after I told her no and that is completely unreasonable and that I can't make that happen, she got frustrated and said that I need to make it work, putting me in a situation that is incredibly annoying. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I work in the city and some friends who work just outside the city want to meet up for dinner. The person who invited me, let's call her Jane for the sake of the story, is disappointed that this won't work for me. And Jane actually told me that I should stay at work until it's time to meet up, which would be at about 7:30 p.m. Now, on Fridays, my office closes at 4 o'clock. The owner is very religious, and the rule in their religion is that everyone needs to be out by 4. But it's here that Jane told me, well, how would they know? So I said, well, they would know because the last person out sets the alarm. She then suggests that I go home first and then come back, but it literally takes like almost 2 hours to get home, so that just doesn't make any sense. She then told me that I should have my husband meet us with a car, but he doesn't want to come, and even if he did come, he wouldn't be able to get into the city until like 7 o'clock p.m. So what am I supposed to do in the meantime? She then said, oh, I don't know, you can shop, go to a few galleries, do something touristy that you never do because you're from there. And it's like, I do not want to do any of that because I'm tired. It's going to be like 9 degrees tomorrow, so it's not exactly walking weather. She's frustrated with me because I'm vetoing all of her suggestions, and honestly, it's just really getting frustrating because right now I don't know what else to do. Okay, in my opinion, I think Jane is being completely unreasonable. If they really wanted you to be there, like really wanted you to show up and attend this event, then they would work around you since you're already there. And you literally are going to be in the city itself. Why should you be displaced for like almost 4 hours until they're ready to eat dinner? Why not just eat at like 5 o'clock instead? That would be way more reasonable. Like I could stick around for an hour and wait for people to show up. That's completely fine by me. I would even be willing to give you 5:30 p.m. Like I can make that work if I needed to. But to expect me to stick around and do nothing for 3.5 hours is very rude. And then to have the audacity to be like, oh, come on, make it work. You need to show up to this. Like, what's going on? Like, bro, what are we doing here? You're being unreasonable. This is not my problem. So yeah, your friend is being super entitled and very inconsiderate of your situation because it's pretty apparent that they are not taking your schedule into account or even choosing to go around what you're doing because they simply don't care. And that really sucks, and you definitely don't deserve that. My mom stole some money from me and gets mad whenever I ask for it or even bring it up. So now, after seriously thinking it over, I'm considering cutting my mom out of my life and moving forward without her. Because right now, I'm pissed off and I seriously don't know what else to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, so every summer, my mom has a yard sale. The setup is usually the same. I send items, my sister helps organize it at her house, and whatever money is made gets split. This past summer, I sent a lot of items and most of them sold. When I later asked how much my share was, my mom told me that she was keeping the money and that it would go towards a family trip. But both my sister and I told her that we didn't want that. We needed the money now. We weren't thinking about a trip at all. Well, she ignored us and we eventually just dropped it. Recently, my mom sent out details for a birthday trip that she's planning and inviting people to. I then asked her if I'd be getting a discount since she kept my yard sale money, but when I said this, she said no. I told her I'd rather just have the money back because it felt like the family trip excuse was made up. I called her out and I said that she was basically stealing from me. She then argued that I wasn't using the items I sold anyways, so I wasn't missing anything. She also told me that whatever she put towards a trip would have been more than what she owed me. I then told her I don't want a coupon for an unknown amount. I want the actual money that I can use on things that I need. Well, she finally said, okay, I'll send it to you. And then she hung up. But guess what? She never sent anything. My sister later told me that my mom feels like I'm doing well, even specifically mentioned amounts that she thinks I earned. So in her mind, she thinks that she can just take from me. So if she's comfortable taking from me now, I don't know how to have a relationship with her going forward. So would I be overreacting if I cut her off out of my life over something like this? Because right now I really don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, first off, I want to say that I think you're completely justified for being pissed off. If my mom stole from me after I gave her some of my property for her to sell, and then decided, oh, I'm going to keep the money for a family trip, not only would I never help out with any yard sales pretty much ever again, but I would also never loan her any amount of money pretty much for the rest of my life. Like, dude, you literally stole from me. You broke like this unwritten contract between the two of us that this money is going to be split between you, my sister, and me. But now she just turns around and takes you and your sister's share. Like, dude, what's going on right now? That's so stupid. So honestly, I don't blame you for being pissed off and feeling the way that you do. Now, when it comes to like cutting them out of your life and cutting them off entirely, I don't know if I would go that route personally. I would probably just like really make a stance of never helping them with anything ever again, because my God, you're never going to burn me like that twice. But honestly, I think the original poster knows their situation way better than any of us can assume. So yeah, you do whatever you got to do. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my friend stay at my apartment after she repeatedly lied about paying rent? Because even though she agreed to contribute to rent and bills while staying with me, she instead decided to take advantage of me and honestly just disrespect me. And at this point, I'm honestly not sure what to do about this. Here's what's going on. I'm a 27-year-old female and I live alone in a small apartment, and a friend of mine, who I will call Sarah for the sake of the story, asked if she could crash for a few weeks because she was having some issues with her own place. At first I said yes because I thought it would be temporary and we were friends. In fact, she told me that she would contribute to rent and bills while she stayed, but as soon as she moved in, she started making excuses. She said she would pay at the end of the week, then at the end of the month, then suddenly claimed that she didn't have enough because of her unexpected expenses. Meanwhile, she treated my apartment like a hotel. She left food and dishes everywhere. She never cleaned up. She used toiletries and even borrowed some of my clothing without asking. I tried to address it calmly, but she brushed it off and acted like I was overreacting. After a month, she still hadn't paid me anything. I reminded her multiple times and she kept promising, but nothing happened. She even started inviting her friends over without telling me and leaving me out of the apartment. I finally told her that she had to leave because I cannot afford to let someone stay rent-free and disrespect my space. She got defensive and said that I was being selfish and treating her like she was a guest instead of a friend. Our mutual friends are now saying that I should have been more understanding and that I could have worked something out, but I feel like she took advantage of me the entire time. I mean, she lied about paying and is completely disrespecting my boundaries. So yeah, am I the jerk here? Should I just let my friend do whatever she wanted and not pay any rent? Because right now I'm pissed off and I just don't know what to do about this. Okay, dude, you did the right thing. I would absolutely tell my friend to take a hike if they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I'll pay rent, only to then be like, sorry, I can't do it. Oops, my bad. Just treat me like a friend and not a guest. And it's like, bro, you are a guest. If you're not paying rent, congratulations, you're not even a tenant. And your friends are completely like stupid in my opinion if they're really trying to be like, wow, you should have worked something out. I can't believe you wouldn't be more understanding. But it's like, bro, we had an agreement before you came in here. You're gonna pay for rent and you're gonna pay for things around the house. Like she even agreed that, yeah, I'm gonna contribute to rent and bills, and then she's like, oh, sorry, I'm just not going to do that now. So no, the original poster is not the jerk, and I really think they did the right thing. Am I the jerk for removing snow from around my car after a big storm and piling it on a grassy area next to my apartment complex? Because after an entitled Karen screamed at me saying that I need to move it, I'm starting to think that I made a mistake and I'm honestly needing some advice. Because right now I don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. This past week, we got a big snowstorm on the East Coast, which halfway through switched to sleet and finished off with rain. This created a thick ice sheet on top of about 6 to 8 inches of snow. I also live in DC and the city has been a mess ever since Sunday. Snow everywhere and plowing on my street is not the top priority. By Tuesday, they finally got to my street and parking is all on the street. So every car is buried by the snow with a thick ice sheet on top of it, which I can literally stand on without breaking through. On Wednesday, it gets sunny and the temperature is about 25 degrees by noon. So I take my opportunity to begin shoveling out my car. The ice is requiring us to literally chop the top layer of ice with metal garden shovels just to break it up. Now, the entire space between the curb and the sidewalk is covered in like a 2-foot pile of hard snow. The grassy area beside the apartment building is melting pretty well and only has small chunks from when a crew removed the ice from the sidewalk. Now, me not wanting to spill the snow and ice onto the sidewalk or build up a greater snow pile next to the cars parked on the street, I begin removing the snow from around my car and placing it in the grassy area next to the building. 3 hours in, I'm almost done removing the snow from around my car and the portion of the road the city isn't plowing. I'm covered in sweat. I feel pretty proud of chopping through all that ice, and and shoveling to clear the roadway. And mind you, this is the rule in DC. You clear your sidewalks and around your cars after a snowstorm, and they explicitly state in the space between the sidewalk and curb or yard space. While removing the last of the snow from behind my car, a woman that lives in an apartment with a balcony above about 6 feet above the building's grassy area comes out and begins screaming at me. She says to me, "Excuse me, did you do this? What do you think you're doing? This is my yard." But I look at her and I say, "Well, where else can I put it? The curb area is way too high." She then responds back by saying, "That pile of snow is going to take days, weeks, months, and years to melt." And yes, she really did say it's going to take years. I respond back by saying, "Come on, lady, be realistic." She then demands that I remove the snow, still screaming at the top of her lungs and creating a scene, going on about her yard and how would I like it if I dumped snow in your yard. Now, I'm so tired from shoveling this heavy snow for 3 hours, so I just say to her, "I get your point, I'll move it." I mean, she was being so ridiculous. I knew she wouldn't listen to anything I said, so I just tried to de-escalate to get back in her apartment and stop screaming. I was just following the city rules for snow removal. The grassy area next to the apartment building gets direct sunlight nearly every day. It's an apartment building, not a condo association. She doesn't own the grassy area. Plus, a storm like this hasn't come through the city in like 20 years. Everyone is struggling to dig out with this much ice. But this lady screams at me when I'm just trying to dig my car out and make my street more passable. I mean, the plows won't get any closer to the cars parked on the street. So I really need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? Did I cross a line by putting the snow on this grassy area? Because right now I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Okay, dude, what are you doing? Don't move any of that. I would tell her to get lost and keep doing what I'm doing. First of all, this is an apartment building, and secondly, she doesn't own the grassy area, meaning that it's not even her yard. Like, bro, she can sit there and be mad for all I care. Like, go ahead and scream. I'm absolutely gonna move it onto that grass area, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, literally, she doesn't own that spot. She can't do anything about it. So for her to claim like any ownership is just completely stupid. So no, you're not the jerk for shoveling the snow onto the grassy area. If anything, you'd be a complete idiot for removing it. Like, there's no way in the world I would ever touch that. I would give her a salute and be like, "See ya, you can move it if you don't like it," because this is some stupid behavior. She has no rights to claim that, and in my opinion, she literally can't do anything about it. My stepson's entitled vegan girlfriend demands that while she's staying here, I need to stop eating meat inside of my own home. But after being confronted by these people, as well as them trying to run the way I live my life, I decided to put my foot down and put these people in their place. Here's what happened. Okay, so my stepson, who we will call Ben for the sake of the story, is 20 years old and is living with us now during summer break from college. About a month ago, he asked if his girlfriend from college, we'll call her Olivia, could stay with us the rest of the summer because she is going through a rough time at home. Now, I wasn't fully on board with the idea because we already have 2 other kids ages 11 and 9 in the house, so having 4 adults and 2 kids in our space is a lot. My wife has a soft spot for Ben and struggles to say no to him, so my concerns were dismissed, and now Olivia is living with us until they go back to school. And there have been a few issues that have come up since Olivia's come along, pretty much all of which have to do with me. First of all, one of the big reasons Olivia wanted to change her living situation is because her parents are alcoholics. Now, I don't drink every day, but I do have alcohol in the house, and I like to have it with a meal sometimes or have a few cocktails on the weekends. And this is very triggering for Olivia to see a parent drinking with kids around. Secondly, Olivia is vegan. We eat a lot of meat in our house, and pretty much every meal has meat involved. I also hunt, so we do eat meat that I've harvested, and I have a few mounts on the wall. And apparently, this makes Olivia especially uncomfortable. Ben and Olivia sat down with my wife and I this past weekend and offered some suggestions to make Olivia's time here easier. Their first suggestion was that if we want to drink, I should do it in private and not around the kids. I tried to interject when they might suggest this could happen, but they asked to let them finish before saying anything. Their next suggestion was to allow Olivia to cook vegan meals for us so that we didn't eat so much meat all the time. She even offered to do grocery shopping and meal planning to provide vegan meals for us instead of our usual meals. And finally, they asked if I could remove the mounts from the walls of the house until they go back to school in 6 weeks. When they finished, I asked if it was okay for me to talk now, and they said yes. And I told them that my answer to all of their suggestions was no. I told them that I appreciate Olivia's offer to cook for us, and she is free to cook any vegan meal for us during the week if she wants to. But we are not going to completely change our diets for one person. But as far as their other suggestions, that's just definitely not happening. My wife spoke up and said that maybe it wouldn't hurt to try their suggestions a little bit and just see how things go. She said it's only 6 weeks, and that changing our lifestyles a little bit for a short period wouldn't destroy us. Well, I told all 3 of them that if they want to change the way they live, they are free to do so. but they are not going to force me to change the way I live in my own home for a temporary guest. I told them that if it means I cook separate meals for myself, so be it, but the mounts are staying up, and if I want a beer or a glass of wine, then I'm definitely going to have one. Now, all three of them think I am being unreasonable and that they are not asking too much of me for a short period of time. So am I in the wrong for not giving in to my stepson's girlfriend's demands? What should I do? Wow, I cannot believe the audacity of Ben, Olivia, and your wife in this situation. Who in the world do these people think they are? You're telling me that a temporary guest is coming into your house and saying, I'm sorry, all these things around me are really triggering and you need to change them just for me. Like, what is happening right now? That is not how this works. If you're a guest in somebody else's house, you can't just make these weird demands and be like, oh, it's really triggering if you don't change this. Like, why should the original poster have to change his entire life around for 6 weeks instead of Olivia and Ben just adapting for the 6 weeks and then going back to college? Like, the original poster has it 100% right. He should not have to take down any of the mounts off the wall, and if he wants to drink beer and eat meat in his own home, then guess what? That's exactly what he's gonna do. And if they don't like that, then they can stay in like the guest room or like make their own meals at separate times. That's like the real solution in my opinion. It's not turning around and trying to control someone else's life all of a sudden as a guest in their home. So no, you didn't do anything wrong. You have every right to live your life in the way that you want to live it. And you most definitely don't have to take orders from somebody who pays $0 to your household.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
An entitled Karen inside of an airport decided to be incredibly rude to a stranger I was standing next to. So I decided to stand up and give her a piece of my mind. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. So I went on a baby moon with my wife to Kona, Hawaii. And this situation happened at the airport on our return trip. If you've never been before, the Kona airport has no closed terminals. It's a bunch of gate open air pavilions that are right next to the aprons and taxiways. So it is very noisy. Now, because of the noise, it's really hard to hear the announcements from the gate agents. Me and my wife noticed that a bunch of people were starting to flock towards the door, and it looked like a line for boarding. As my pregnant wife and I were walking towards the line, a woman close to our age, maybe in her 30s, right next to us said, I think this is the line for boarding, right? Are we boarding right now? And I replied by saying, I'm not sure. We're just along for the ride and we hope that we just end up on the plane. The lady then bantered back something like, oh, I guess we'll find out. But right at that moment, cue the done-up, wealthy-looking, cream pantsuit Karen lady with a fancy bag walking opposite side of us. She spoke over the first lady and said, well, if you bothered to pay attention, you'd know they're announcing boarding groups. The first lady was kind of meekly shocked and she said, oh, I just didn't know. But this entitled Karen said, yeah, we can tell. Now, I am a pretty laid-back guy, and I'm always willing to talk to strangers. I usually assume if someone's being a jerk, they've probably got their own problems, but the way this old Karen spoke down to a friendly stranger twice, looking like she was a Hillary Clinton lookalike, honestly just really set me off. I looked at her straight in the eye and I said, sorry we inconvenience you, but that's really no way to be an absolute rude jerk to a complete stranger. You sound miserable to be around. It was so direct and unexpected that this Karen just stood there stuttering and scoffing as she fell behind. I walked away with my wife guffawing and chuckling next to me, feeling 10 feet tall. And I thought this was over, but it definitely wasn't. As we approached the gate agent with our boarding passes, I saw some movement behind me. This Karen was speed shuffling up the priority boarding lane and slipped into line right behind us and said to the man right there, that's him. That's the guy who cussed me out. Her husband was the guy in line behind us and she had caught up to him. The husband then said, this guy? And I was immediately prepared to de-escalate, but he just looked back at me with a somber look on his face. So I just told him the truth directly. I said to him, I didn't cuss her out. Your wife was being awful to a stranger, so I told her to stop being so rude. The old man just looked back at her and said tiredly, well, I mean, honey, come on. And it's right then that I knew that the man knew. He knew that there was no reason to defend her. He didn't even say anything to me, but I saw the apology in his eyes. By that point, it was our turn to board, so we sit down and have a sleepy flight back to Alaska. And I honestly still feel good about putting this Karen in her place. Yeah, I really love those situations because they come around like once in a blue moon. And when they do happen, they just feel so good. And this Karen absolutely deserved it. She was mouthing off to a stranger for literally no reason, and in my opinion, that kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for telling my extended family that I'm not ignorant to how they really treated my dad when he was growing up? Because right now, they are equally upset with me as they are with my dad. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 16-year-old female, and I always knew that my dad didn't like his family. We saw them very little my whole life. Really rare that we're with his side, but they're not totally no contact either. So it's always tense when we are around each other. 2 weeks ago, my dad's cousin was in town, and there was a party for the extended family. I spent most of the time with cousins who I do see more frequently, but at some point an argument started, and then literally everything hit the fan. Eventually, I was approached by some extended family members, and it was just a massive mess. So the thing with my dad and his family is that my dad is half adopted. His dad, meaning my grandpa, passed away when he was 5 years old, and his mom, or my grandma, remarried less than a year afterwards, and my dad was adopted by his stepfather by the time he was 7 years old. My dad was never okay with the adoption. He was angry, hurt, and grieved the fact that his dad was replaced. He never forgave his mom. He never even liked his stepfather for doing it, and never called him dad or liked him because of it. His mom and stepfather tried to make him change his feelings, and when his half-siblings were born, they were all on their parents' side. My dad saw it as unforgivable, and when he went to college, which I think was when he was like 17 years old, he told me he never went back home and had really little contact. He didn't invite either his mom or stepfather to his wedding or his half-siblings, and I think it was after that that they got really upset at him for still having an issue with being adopted, and he even had his name changed as well. In fact, when my parents got married, my dad changed his last name to my mom's. They told me before that she would have taken his last name if his had not been changed when he was a kid. So to save money, they decided to have dad change his name once instead of both of them changing it. Now, for the sake of the story, when I was born, they named me Megan. Megan is not my real name, and this was my dad's original last name and my grandpa's last name. He told me how much the name meant to him and to mom too, because she said she loved how he lit up every time I'm called Megan. So I know that my dad hates his family, even though he gets along well with his cousins. When the argument broke out, my dad's mom and stepfather and his half-siblings came over to me and they tried to explain stuff to me. They acted like I had no idea what the fight was over, and they told me my dad has some emotional issues and that they said he was throwing another tantrum like he did when he named me. But they also said that they all still really love each other. But I told them I'm not dumb, and I know how things really are with them. I told them I know my dad hates them and he never wanted to be adopted. Well, when I said that, their anger just came right back, but it was all directed at me, and they told me I know nothing, and surely I can see how childish it is to hate being loved after more than 40 years. My parents stepped in and we left right after that, but I got a Facebook message from some of them afterwards saying that I should really think before I speak. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? It is so ironic that they're trying to be like, oh, you should think before you speak, because I really think they need to take their own advice. Who in their right mind would go up to a teenager and be like, hey, guess what? I'm going to assume that you're really dumb and you don't know what's going on, so let me give you a jaded point of view about your father and try to turn him against you. Here you go. Like, what are you doing? Stay away from other people's kids. That is so messed up, it's not even funny. And the fact that they try to do that to you, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. My entitled manager at the restaurant I used to work at refused to pay me for the entire month that I worked there, choosing instead to make fun of me and mock me to all of my coworkers. But in the end, I get the last laugh as that restaurant burned down to the ground, causing this guy to literally lose everything. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of quick context, I worked at this restaurant in question throughout November of 2023 for only about a month as a failed job hop, and the fire that happened in this restaurant happened in mid-May this year, and I hopped jobs due to getting underscheduled at my old job. Also, for starters, it is important to know that I am from Germany, so US laws may not apply to my situation, and secondly, I am not very well versed and made quite a few mistakes along the way, so feel free to call anything out that you might see. Okay, let's jump right into it. The restaurant in question was a mid-sized German-Russian restaurant located in a very old building, including a few 9-pin bowling lanes. The current owner of the restaurant was relatively new, and they had only been there for maybe about 2 years at that time. Now, I applied for a job there since the place is very close to my flat, and the owner seemed sympathetic, and I liked the day that I was tested to see if I could work there. It was a fast-paced job, but it was fun enough. Now, I did not mesh well with the coworkers due to awkwardness mostly, and I also did not receive a lot of training. Questions were often met with sarcasm, and I was told to do what I was told, but also chastised for dumb questions. But I told myself to tough it out and do my best. No job is ever going to be perfect. Well, the first major red flag was my boss getting drunk every single night, and I mean literally drunk. I also worked this month under a verbal agreement, which was a massive mistake, as I was told they could only register me on the first of the month, which was a big lie, and it was a huge mistake for me to believe them. Gradually, the boss treated me worse and worse. He literally told me he expected me to be perfect and that I need to be a mini version of him. He also made really inappropriate remarks in regards to my newlywed husband. He would say stuff like, "Oh, you just want to go home early on New Year's so you can spend some quality time with your husband, if you know what I mean." Now, the last 3 days, I got openly screamed at, I got berated in front of a coworker and insulted, which resulted in me crying during my shifts and literally shaking from the anxiety of messing up. Now, there are several mistakes that led to this. For starters, I mistakenly carried wine into the cellar, and this is all due to a misunderstanding of instructions. I also carried gas canisters into the wrong room after being told to get them out of the way. I also poorly wrapped some cutlery, and I forgot to greet all the kitchen staff members. But seriously, my biggest mess up was spilling beer on a customer, and I barely got any kind of backlash for that. I then texted my old job, and I asked if I can please just come back, to which they happily agreed. Since I was under a verbal agreement, I decided to reach out to my then boss and let him know that I would not be working with him in the future. I offered to help him out during December and leave peacefully in January, just so I would not leave them hanging during the holidays, thinking that I would extend some kind of olive branch. But boy was I wrong. He blew up on me via text messaging, saying I betrayed them for taking me in, for wasting his time, and that he had just registered me as working there, so he just simply had to deduct the fee of $150 from my wages, which is nuts and incredibly illegal. I refused and tried to de-escalate while letting him know that I would not be coming back to work, while he demanded a proper reason as to why I'm leaving, to which I responded that I would not tolerate any more disrespect or insults. Well, when I said that, he got even angrier. He said that I deserved him screaming at me and that I should stop making up all these lies. After I ignored his ranting, he went straight to the work group chat, copying my messages and posting them in there, making fun of me and demanding to know who insulted me. I explained that I was privately talking to him and nobody else. I apologized for escalating, and then I left the group after I started crying out of disbelief and shock. He would send in every message I sent him, so I eventually just stopped. I left him at that, and I just hoped that I would get paid. And just as I should have expected, I did not get paid. I messaged him outlining what he owed me, and he essentially told me to get lost and get a lawyer. I tried to reason with him, but there was literally no point. I wasted my November working for this trashy place, but I was still bitter. I decided not to sue, as the cost would have exceeded the wage he was withholding. I received a new contract at my old job, and I was actually happy with my job, so I kind of forgot about the place, only really bringing it up when driving by. Now, since that place had crazy turnover, and because 3 colleagues had left in the month I was working, I would assume that I wasn't the only one being cheated out, but this is honestly pure speculation. Well, cut to mid-May this year, and I open my family group chat, and someone sends me a video of a fire in the building. There were unknown causes, and it's heavily speculated that it was an arson. Luckily, no one got hurt, but the entire building got destroyed either by fire or the copious amounts of water needed to put it out. They demolished that place in June, and so the restaurant was no more. Now, of course, the owner kept and is to this day still crying on Facebook and Instagram about it, and most recently, they opened a GoFundMe page, which really is not doing well. I'm very happy that no one got hurt, and it absolutely sucks people lost their houses that day, but at the same time, I can feel a sixth sense of happiness that this happened to them, like he got what was coming for him. I am absolutely petty for checking their socials every now and then, just to see what's going on at the moment, and most recently, they revealed the house owner that they were renting had very poor insurance, so they are financially and royally ruined. So hopefully the wages and tips they stole from their employees will help cover their butts, but honestly and thankfully, it probably won't. Yeah, that is one of those jobs where you know almost instantly that these people really suck. They treat you like garbage right off the bat, they refuse to train you and almost mock you when you ask questions, and then when you try to leave this place and go find a better job, they freak out on you and say, "No, you need to give me a real reason." And it's like, what are you talking about? I don't have to tell you anything, especially if I'm employed under a verbal contract. And you know what? That's definitely one of those like lesson learned situations where it's like, okay, we're definitely not going to do that again now, are we? But even then, this manager is an idiot for opening himself up like that, and he literally lied to you and got free labor as a result. That is really unfortunate, but I think it all worked out at the end of the day because this guy got exactly what he deserved. Am I the jerk for having my wedding on a day that my friend can't take off from work? Here's what happened. So my fiance and I are throwing together a small wedding in our backyard that's set for 6 weeks from now. We've been engaged for over a year now, and we have a daughter, so we figure that it's time. We are not into the whole production that some bigger weddings can become, so we're
try to keep things extremely casual. As a result, we've been texting and calling people to invite them in lieu of the more traditional paper invites. I texted a friend of mine with a date and time, telling her that we would love to have her attend our little gathering if she could make it, and trust me, her reply really sent me for a loop. She responded very upset that the wedding was so close and that she didn't have time to prepare for it. On top of that, I scheduled the wedding on a day that she works at the county fair. She then went on to say that my decision was rushed and that I should be giving my guests as much time as possible to get ready for the wedding. Now, I didn't want to make her feel bad about not being able to make it, so I told her I understand that it was a busy time for her and that she should not worry. She then replied saying that I was being dismissive and was questioning if we were ever truly friends because I didn't think to check the fair dates before setting the date for my wedding. She went on about how she wanted to be involved in the planning process and that it felt like a big slap in the face that she wasn't being involved. I responded by apologizing that I hadn't checked the dates because I really thought that I knew them, but also I questioned why she couldn't just take the day off if it was really so important that she had to be there. Well, apparently she would be fired if she did that because she's the only cook available for the whole week of the fair, and apparently 6 weeks isn't enough time to find someone to cover one shift. She responds to my apology by saying that it's not a little mistake and that I should have asked her when she would be available. She also asked why she hadn't been notified sooner. I've tried to tell her that it's just a small, casual affair and that my fiance and I are the only ones involved in the planning process. I've tried apologizing, but she just doesn't want to hear it. And at this point, I'm angry at her that she seems very determined on making my wedding about her and her needs. I have disengaged from the conversation entirely, but it is all still haunting me. So I really need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm seriously so distraught and I just don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk in this situation. Let me get this straight. Your friend's like, oh, you're getting married? You need to check my schedule first before you can make that happen. Like, does your friend hear herself even for a second? Like, her attitude towards you getting married is completely insane in my opinion. From the sounds of it, it doesn't seem like this is a very big situation or like event of some kind, and it really is just a small gathering of people that you guys really love and care about. So the fact that she can't get her life together in 6 weeks, in my opinion, is completely insane. And also, I'm pretty sure she's lying when she's like, oh, I'm the only one that can cover this one shift, and I'm gonna be fired if I call out. That is absolutely ridiculous, and I don't believe her for a second. Like, seriously, you have a month and a half to get it figured out. And the fact that she can't do that isn't because she isn't able to, it's because she's an entitled, spoiled brat who is only thinking about herself. Like, that's the only thing that's rattling around in her stupid brain. And in my opinion, she does not care about you in the slightest. So no, you did nothing wrong by scheduling your wedding, and if your friend wants to make a big deal about this and try to make it about herself, then honestly, that is her problem and not yours. A crazy Karen throws herself onto the floor and has a literal temper tantrum after she doesn't get the answer that she's looking for. And despite the fact that I tried my very best to provide the best customer service that I possibly could, this Karen decided to go nuclear, freaking out on me in a way that I've honestly never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I work in pest control. I've now worked in it for about 3 years, and I regularly see some crazy, entitled, and even dangerous people. And I don't say this to scare people away. I think it's a wonderful job which comes with a lot of freedom, and 9 times out of 10, you do meet somebody who is nice. Now, I can agree that since I work with it, I've gotten used to going into homes where people have bed bugs, mice, or ants in their living room, so sometimes I have to remind myself that what they're experiencing is a first for them, but this is like the millionth time that I've seen it. So yes, we do sometimes come off as a bit cold to a situation. That's because from the point when we come in through the door, we're trying to think of the best way to help. And no, I don't mind if your house or apartment is a bit messy, since working crime scene cleanup is a part-time job, so believe me, I've seen much worse. So I got an order to go and help a lady in her mid-40s with what she believed to be some sort of wood-boring beetle, which is very common in Europe where I'm from, especially if you have bad ventilation or if the temperature inside fluctuates a lot. And she is making this conclusion since she is seeing a lot of markings on her furniture. When I get there, I introduce myself to her and she seemed nice. A bit worried perhaps, but nothing out of the ordinary. She tells me her story and I just nod along. She then takes me to her living room where her 5-year-old was sitting glaring at his iPad. Now, the living room, despite its larger size, felt very cramped, and that's because all the walls were covered with shelves and all the shelves were covered with stuff. She then takes me to the coffee table and points to it. See? She asks, almost a bit hissing. There they are, ruining my table. I guess I'll have to throw it out. And I just bought this thing. Now who's gonna be paying for this? Now when she said this, I got shocked. This lady went from like 0 to 100 in less than a breath. I got closer to the table and I had a look. I say to her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't really see what you're talking about. Do you mean these scratch marks?" And I say that as I point because right now I'm very confused. She then begins to yell, "Those aren't any scratch marks." And at this point, I can see her eyes filling with tears. She then says, "And I have similar markings here on the wall, and I have them on the window, and I have them on the fridge in the kitchen." I noticed that she had gotten very flustered, but by what, I really couldn't understand. So I asked if I could maybe have a look around and try to see if I can put anything together. She said to me, "Yes, I'll be in the bedroom. Just yell later and I'll come along." She then waved her hand at me and walked off. And I thought to myself, okay, that's really weird. But I honestly was very eager to see if I could find a solution to her problems. I went through almost the entire house, but I couldn't find a single thing. All the markings that she had pointed out had very good reasons for being there. So after some time, I called her out of the bedroom. I said to her, "Ma'am, so I went through your house and I had a look at all the things that you pointed out, and I can say that if it were a common wood-boring beetle, it wouldn't create markings in concrete, glass, or even the steel from the fridge." Now, it's at this point that things really started to break down. Because when I said that, this was apparently code for, okay, let's act like a child. Because the second I stopped talking, she began bawling her eyes out and screaming at me. And mind you, the child is still sitting in the living room next to us. Now, I handle a lot of strange and yes, dumb people almost every day, but one thing I don't tolerate is someone screaming in my face. I then said to her in a very strong voice, "Listen here, ma'am. The chips from the concrete is from when someone hanged a painting, and the markings in the glass is from someone scratching it. Also, the floor looks that way because that's how hardwood floors look like after someone has repeatedly walked in high heels. And your table looks like that because it's old and it's been used. Oh, and your stainless steel refrigerator got that marking after what looks like a BB was shot at it." And on the side, I'm extra proud of that last statement because I could see the child on the sofa trying to hide behind the iPad just a little bit more. Well, when I said all this prompted her to suddenly fall to the floor. And for a split second, I actually thought that she had collapsed or fainted. That is, until she started kicking and screaming into the floor. I thought to myself, okay, now I know how the floor got those markings. And the entire time she was freaking out, I was trying not to giggle. And that's mostly because of this Karen and her unpredictable attitude. Now, it's at this moment that the husband came in, and I didn't even know that he was home. The husband then says, "Hey, do you think it could be the mold in the air that's causing the damage?" And he said this not even acknowledging his own wife laying on the ground kicking and screaming. I then looked at him and I said, "I doubt it," and I noticed that he was much calmer and more collected to talk to. And I finished off by saying that it's just old-fashioned wear and tear. He then looks at me dead in the eye and says, "Oh, okay, well, thanks for stopping by." And he said this all while giving me the best handshake I've ever gotten. So I left, not knowing what in the world I did, not knowing if they ever accepted that it wasn't a pest that had attacked their furniture, and not knowing how to explain this one to my boss, because that Karen was absolutely out of her mind, and I honestly will never forget that situation in my life. Yeah, you've got to be a special kind of crazy to throw a temper tantrum on the ground, all because you're not getting the answer that you're looking for. And the fact that the husband walked in and he's just not even like acknowledging the fact that his wife is freaking out on the ground, like that part is hilarious to me and I just cannot get over that. So good for you for keeping your professionalism and trying to have some kind of like professional demeanor, because I'm pretty sure I would bust up laughing if someone did that to me, and I definitely would have to be fired. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen demands that we give her back her car for free after it was towed for being abandoned in the middle of the road. And after I tried several times to describe the process of getting her stupid car back, this entitled Karen refused to listen or take no for an answer, forcing me to deal with this idiot for over 4 hours. Here's what happened. So I work overnights for a good-sized tow company in a popular Northwest city. I was in the truck for over 10 years, but now I'm in the office. I dispatch drivers, process paperwork, and help customers at the front counter when they come in to get their vehicles. Now, I should mention that we are the primary contractor for our city's police department, which means we respond when they want a vehicle towed for a parking infraction, a DUI, an accident, a stolen vehicle, etc. We also have contracts with private properties to remove improperly parked vehicles, but the police work is by far the largest percentage of our business. Being overnights, I see more than my fair share of DUI calls and accident calls, while I have less parking infraction calls on my shift. But being on graveyard, I also get more than my fair share of crazy people. And trust me when I say this is definitely some foreshadowing. Now, for the most part, people who come in are pretty decent. They're not happy to have to pay to get their car out, but they usually understand that the police order the vehicle towed, so their bad mood is best aimed at the cops. cops. Some of them actually admit that they made a mistake and chalk it up as a learning experience. But overall, it's kind of a crapshoot, and I have thick skin, so it doesn't really bother me. Well, on this particular evening, the shift previous to mine was busy, so I helped the clerk get caught up on his paperwork. There were a lot of parking infractions from some event downtown, so I knew the beginning of my shift would see some of these people coming in to get their cars. And sure enough, I did. Now, most people were civil, except for this one entitled Karen. When she walked in, I noticed that she was maybe in her 30s, and she was giving off very strong Karen vibes. She explains that her car was towed because she ran out of gas and left it in the middle of the street. The police then deemed it a hazard to traffic and ordered it to be towed. And this honestly happens all the time. She mentions wanting a form to request a hearing with the court to contest the impound. And this is honestly no problem for us. We can absolutely do that one of two ways. Option one is to pay the bill, get an itemized receipt and a hearing form, and then take the vehicle. She would then need to send the hearing form in, and at the hearing itself, explain to the judge the circumstances. If they decide that it shouldn't have been towed, or they want to cut the owner a break, they'll get some or all of their money back. The second option is to request an expedited hearing. I fill out a form and I fax it to the court. They don't get to take the vehicle, but they can get property out of it if needed. Then, 2 business days later, a hearing is held and they can explain the circumstances to the judge. If the judge finds in their favor, the court clerk will give the owner a form that directs us to release the vehicle to the owner at no charge. Once they come back to me and give me the form, I release the car and the transaction is done. Now, here's the thing. She wanted the hearing form, but she wanted to take the vehicle without payment. And guess what? That is definitely not the way it works. Well, when I explain that, she immediately goes off on me, demanding a manager and threatening to call the police, swearing that her lawyer was going to get us shut down, and stating that her car had been impounded before, and that was how it was done before then as well. When I was able to get a word in edgewise, I explained it yet again. Then she wanted a copy of the company policy, and I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? Does the grocery store need a company policy to say that you can't take those bananas without paying? When she realized that I wasn't going to budge, she then told me that I was a bad man and that I was not a godly man, and I just agreed with her. She then looked at me like I had slapped her in the face and went outside. Now, I presume that she tried calling the police and was just completely laughed at. I had other people to help, so I didn't see her for a while, but when she came back in, I didn't think that she could be in a worse mood, but my God, she managed it. I then had to explain the hearing form procedures over and over again with her boyfriend. She kept saying that it didn't make any sense and was demanding to know exactly how she would get reimbursed. I told her I've never attended one of those hearings, so I don't know how they do things there, and no one ever comes back to tell me. Then I made the mistake of suggesting that she might not be reimbursed, and oh my God, did that set her off again. The dude finally got tired of her garbage and handed me a debit card and just ended the pain. In total, this was nearly a 4-hour ordeal, and thankfully, the rest of the night was comparatively very smooth. Yeah, the entitled Karen of this story is absolutely out of her mind if she seriously didn't think that her car sitting in the middle of the road wasn't a hazard to all the traffic around her. Also, how on earth do you go that long without gasoline where the only place you can stop and get things figured out is the middle of the road? She's either really dumb or incredibly lazy, but I'm honestly willing to bet that it's probably both. So good for you for putting this Karen in her place, because her attitude and behavior, in my opinion, was completely inappropriate. A group of daycare workers lost my kid while she was in their care, and then tried to shift that blame onto me and my wife, claiming that my daughter was being very bad and that if we had taught her better manners, she wouldn't have run away from the daycare workers. So now I'm considering making a full-scale investigation to truly get down to the bottom of what actually happened, because right now I am very angry and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so myself, my wife, and our 3 kids were all at a social event on Friday with childcare provided. It was a small event, and my 3 kids, ages 12, 10, and 7, were the only ones present. The 12-year-old elected to stay with my wife and I, while the younger ones wanted to do the kids' activities. Now, I will note that these are not strangers. We have been a part of this group for several years, and we know everybody present. Childcare providers have been background checked and vetted, so it's not like we are dumping our kids with complete strangers. Fast forward about an hour, and my wife and I are chatting with some of our closer friends when someone comes and waves my wife out of the room. Now, they're friends, so I don't think anything of it, but a few minutes later, I'm walking down the hallway, and someone says to me, "Have they found your daughter yet?" It took me a second to process what was being asked, but then it finally clicks. My oldest son and I sprint to the classroom, and when we get there, my wife is holding my 7-year-old daughter, who is literally beside herself, and my 10-year-old son looks like he has seen a ghost. My wife is in tears, and by this point, my buddy who I was chatting with has caught up to me. So I hand my sons off off to him and I go to check on the girls. When I get over there, one of the two childcare providers is lecturing my wife about how my kids didn't respond well to the activity that she worked very hard to plan and how we need to teach them to be more polite. Now, I'm much more interested in what the heck happened, but I come to find out that several minutes before someone got my wife, that my daughter had become upset, run out of the room, and hidden behind a door. The teachers looked for her themselves, then involved a handful of other people, and still had not found her when my wife came in and called her. In that moment, my number one concern was getting my daughter calm and getting us out of the situation. And over the last couple of days, I've gotten more out of my middle son, my wife, and my daughter. What I've learned is that my daughter didn't want to do the activity, and the teacher demanded that she do it or she wouldn't get to play. My 10-year-old stuck up for his sister, and while the teachers were scolding him, my daughter ran for it. I won't pretend that my kids are perfect. They can be grade A morons sometimes, but I know my girl, and for her to straight up run away from a situation honestly means that it had to be pretty sideways. And that's because she is tough as nails 99% of the time. What I've also discovered is that at no point did the words, "Oh, I'm sorry I lost your kid and didn't tell you," ever escape anybody's lips. With a couple days to think it over, I'm planning on demanding the video footage from the security guy, as well as a full explanation for how two teachers with a whopping 2 kids in their care managed to lose track of one of them. I'm not hung up on the apology or the lecture, as that really is just insult to injury. I don't want to destroy a group of longtime friends, but the more I think about it, the more I'm persuaded to believe that everything about the situation is absolutely unacceptable and that there is more to what happened than we were told, and I want to know exactly what went down. So honestly, would I be overreacting for investigating this further? What should I do? No, you would not be overreacting at all. If I was a parent in your shoes and I had kids in this daycare and they were the only kids in the daycare, I would be furious that they not only yelled at my kid, but also lost one of them in the process. Like seriously, it's a 2-on-2 situation. How could they possibly be that bad at their job where they can't contain both of those children in like a small room for this small event? Like seriously, that is unacceptable. And in my opinion, I don't care how long you've been friends with any of these people, the second they start screaming at your wife or your kids about how bad they were, while also completely dancing around the blame, in my opinion, especially if I were you, that's when the gloves would be off and I absolutely would take no prisoners. Because I'm right there with the original poster. The apology or the lecture that they tried to give, which by the way was so stupid, I totally agree that's just insult to injury, but the fact that they were so negligent that they allowed this kid to run away, in my opinion, is the real problem that these people absolutely should be held accountable for. An entitled cranky old regular is constantly a problem at the restaurant I work at, and every time he walks in, I am always dreading if I'm going to be the unlucky soul that has to deal with him. Here's what happened. Okay, so we have a regular at my brunch spot by the name of Howard. Howard is not his real name. Now, Howard is a crotchety old jerk, and I have never experienced anything like his constant negativity. I am one of the 2 older bartenders on our team, namely that I'm in my 30s, and we have several cute young girls in their early 20s. He is awful to me and the other older spinster on site, but is plenty friendly with the younger coworkers, despite being old enough to be their grandfather. Howard sends his stuff back every single day. Maybe it's not hot enough, or maybe it's not cooked right. And he even sent back some food that had 7 flakes of parsley on the hash brown instead of having the 8 that he was expecting. Honestly, it just doesn't matter the reason, something is always going back. When we bring back out the new pancake or egg or whatever he just ordered, he then insists that everything else get remade to be eaten together, which also disqualifies the new food. So really, most of the time, it gets remade twice. Suffice to say, everyone absolutely hates Howard. All of my managers have straight up told him not to come back, yet there he is at least 4 days a week, sucking all the joy out of my shift. Today, I had the absolute gift of serving my man Howard. We were also super busy because it's Sunday in a popular brunch spot, so I grabbed a glass and another glass stuck to it, and the second glass ended up dropping. So I thought to myself, okay, whatever, things can happen, so I'll just sweep it up. I'm also 7 months pregnant, so about 15 minutes later, my baby bump hit a shaker tin while I was trying to wipe the bar top and it fell over. While me, my coworker, and another gal at the bar are all just giggling together at me being really clumsy as a pregnant woman, Howard starts muttering. I gave him a look, and he says to me, "Will you slow down and watch what you're doing? It's impossible to relax with you making a constant racket." Well, when he said that, I kind of chuckled, because yeah, okay, I dropped a glass and a tin, but he's also 2 feet from an industrial-sized espresso machine, literally making an absolute racket. There's also everyone in the county having brunch, and the loudest top 40 crap corporate playlist is playing very loudly. So this is hardly a relaxing environment. He then follows up by saying, "No, seriously, you're making a mess. You need to slow down." Well, fast forward, and he was then surprised when I ignored him for the rest of the day. So I'm honestly just so sick of Howard, and I really hope I don't have to deal with him ever again. I cannot believe that someone who acts like that is even allowed back in the restaurant at this point. They're constantly sending back food and saying awful things to the servers and the bartenders, and for some reason they're welcomed back as if nothing happened. Like at that point, it just seems like the managers are welcoming a toxic work environment. So I'm right there with you, and I really hope you just don't have to deal with Howard anytime soon, because his attitude sounds atrocious and I don't blame you for ignoring him. An entitled Karen tries to force my dog to meet her dog, despite the fact that my dog is not very friendly. And after arguing with her back and forth and trying to get her to see reason and to get away from me, I finally hit my breaking point, forcing me to snap at this lady and put her in her place. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened a few hours ago where I was out walking my dog. My dog is a 7-year-old cattle dog, and while generally very friendly, can be a bit dog reactive while restricted on a leash. I see up ahead an older woman walking her dog along the path towards us, so I move off to the side of the path by about 5 meters, and I'm doing this to let her pass and keep a comfortable distance between our dogs. When she reaches me, she turns off the path and literally starts walking towards me, gesturing at our dogs and saying, "Oh, they can meet." I tell her politely, "Oh, no thank you. This one doesn't like meeting other dogs on leash. We're just gonna stay over here and let you pass." She continues walking towards me, and then she says, "Let the dog decide if he wants to or not." So I think to myself, okay, thanks for your unsolicited advice on how to train my champion agility dog, random old woman. At this point, I wanted to tell her to kindly get lost, but we live in a small town, and I don't know whose grandmother this might be, so I'm trying to keep things as polite as possible. I tell her again, "No, he doesn't like meeting dogs on a leash. Please give us some space." She takes another step forward and says to me, "Does he play with other dogs? I mean, have you even given him the opportunity to?" So I tell her that yes, he does, just not while he's on a leash. I then say to her, "I've had this dog for 7 years. I know what he doesn't like, so please just give us space." She finally stops advancing, but continues arguing with me. She says to me, "His heckles aren't up or anything. I think he'll be fine." I then say to her more sternly, "No, he does not want to. I know my dog." She responds by saying, "I know my dog too." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's great for you. At this point, I'm just staring at her blankly, trying to process how stupid this whole conversation is. Finally, she looks at me and says, "I think the problem is more with you than with the dog." And when she said that, I thought to myself, okay, the gloves are off, you old bat. I don't care whose grandmother you are. I say to her, "I actually didn't ask for your opinion, and I don't care about what you think whatsoever. Do not come any closer." Well, when I said that, she finally gets the message, and she then throws her arms in the air like some great injustice had just been done. She then shuffles off down the path, muttering under her breath about how rude and unfriendly I am. Now, I should point out that this whole time, her dog, who is a very old working breed of some kind, is just lazily following along next to her, showing absolutely no interest in me or my dog, and certainly no particular interest in meeting us. My dog, on the other hand, was standing upright and rigid, staying close to me and clearly wanting nothing to do with the unwanted approach. This entire interaction was being driven by her, despite me stating clearly and multiple times that I did not want it to happen. There is something very unique about that generation that makes them completely incapable of understanding that what they want isn't the same thing as what everybody else wants. And I honestly hope that I never deal with anybody like that ever again. Yeah, that Karen who was trying to get close to your dog was so far out of line. It sounds like that dog really would have messed up her dog, and she was seriously playing with fire. Like you were trying to warn her. You were trying to say, "Hey, my dog is going to mess your dog up really badly. You need to keep your dog away from me." But it quite literally fell on deaf ears. So good for you for standing up for yourself and getting this weird entitled Karen off your back, because the way she was acting was completely unacceptable. My entitled parents don't like my boyfriend simply because he isn't rich, and they've even gone as far as saying that I'm going to be setting myself up for a life of financial struggle unless I dump him and move on. And I'm now questioning everything about my life, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 31-year-old female, and I've been dating my 28-year-old boyfriend for 4 years, and we are going to be moving in together in 2 weeks. I am really excited, as I've never taken this step before in a relationship, and that's because I've lived alone since I was 24. I have grown up very privileged, and I'm very grateful for everything my parents have provided me. But on the other hand, my boyfriend has grown up in a lower income household. He has a full-time job managing a local coffee shop. He pays his bills and has never asked me once for money. He has attempted secondary school, but he hasn't been successful. And he knows that his current gig is not a forever thing. On the other hand, I am highly ambitious. I'm a manager at a hospital with a pension plan and all the adult things that come along with it. I'm also a waitress during the weekends to earn some extra money. On top of that, I dog sit and cat sit, as well as dog walk for the doctors I work with, as I am much cheaper than any kennel they could find, and I'm a huge animal lover. With all this extra income, I bought a piece of land in cash last year. It's been almost 5 years of doing the two-job thing, and I've reached a level of burnout that I've never experienced before. I work nearly 7 days a week, and I've been thinking about quitting my part-time job as my boyfriend is moving in, and he will be paying half the bills. I really want to get some better work-life balance because my mental health is not good. I recently confided in my mom about the burnout I'm experiencing, and it was actually on my birthday last week, and I showed up to my family birthday party dinner in tears. I had to reschedule my own birthday party because I was called into the restaurant, and I don't really get to see my friends all that much, so I was really looking forward to it. I told my mom I don't really want my second job anymore, as I no longer need that extra income to afford my car, my rent, or my bills, and that I've given up on home ownership in the near future, at least on my own. Well, it was then that she made some really nasty comments that have honestly completely blown me away. She said to me, "You better get used to a life of financial struggle if you want to stay with him." And she was saying all these awful things in that regard, even though I never brought my boyfriend up once. Keep in mind, I was already pretty upset, and I thought that it was so inappropriate that I almost walked out. I've always wanted validation from my parents, and this has very much bothered me over the years. And I've even been going to therapy about my burnout for the last month using the employee assistance program at my work. But therapy is now turning into how much pressure I put on myself to do it all, and this is due to how I was raised. My boyfriend is fully aware of their opinions of him, and still he sticks around and supports me. His unconditional love means a lot to me, as my parents' love is very much conditional. He has been my rock during this mental health struggle, and it's upsetting that I don't receive the same support from my parents. It's almost like they're disappointed that I can't handle it. And now I'm not sure how to move forward with my parents, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, your parents are super toxic. First of all, you came to your mom looking for I don't know, motherly advice, and she's like, "Oh yeah, your job sucks. I totally understand. By the way, your boyfriend's awful and you should leave him." It's like, whoa, wait a second, what are we doing? Why on earth would you bring him up? He has nothing to do with any of this. That is just completely out of left field. So for her to say that out of nowhere is just completely insane to me. But when it comes to the burnout, I can kind of understand why you're burned out, because you literally work a full-time job and then you're a waitress on the weekends. And I could maybe do that for a few years, but after 5 years of that, I would probably lose my mind. So honestly, when it comes to your parents, I think it might be time to find someone else that you can confide in, because your mom very clearly has some negative opinions about your boyfriend, and I personally think that is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for not wanting my ex-wife back after she's been texting me and calling me non-stop, practically begging me to let her back into my life? Because right now I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I was married for nearly 5 years to my now ex. I have 2 boys who are teenagers, and she did not have any children. Now, there is an 8-year age gap, and yes, I know it's probably too much, and probably has a huge bearing on the situation. And she also wanted children between us, and I wanted that as well. But here's where the real reason that I'm here comes into play. A couple years ago, my wife left me for another man, and I have absolutely no idea. I walked in from work, and she told me that she was leaving, and literally went straight to the house. I asked to meet up with her to talk, but she declined. I mentioned marriage counseling, and she said that counseling is dumb and doesn't work. I tried everything to get the madness to stop, but she was bent on staying with him, and this absolutely broke me. Never have I been so hurt in all my life. I poured everything into her, and I just get kicked in the teeth. So I concede to her request, and the divorce goes through, and I start my healing process. More than a year passes, and I get a text message from her saying that she wants to meet up and talk and see if we can work things out. She says she made a mistake, but I reminded her that I gave her so many chances to come back, but she kept choosing to stay away. After talking for a bit, I find out that she is pregnant, but not with a guy that she left me for. So I said there's just no point. Then a friend of hers tells me that she married the guy that got her pregnant. But you know what? I'm fine with that, and I continue to heal. Before she gives birth and even afterwards, she calls me and texts me. And again, she's asking to talk and see if we can try to get back together. But I tell her that I cannot be a part of something just to replay what happened to me again. But she says it's not like that. Well, she keeps trying to guilt me into coming back, saying that I don't love her and that I never loved her, and she also accuses me of not forgiving her. But I feel like I can forgive someone, but not have to have that person back in my life. I will always love her. We were married, and you can't just get rid of that feeling, but I am not in love with her. I feel I made the right decision, and it seems to me that she is the same as she ever was. Am I thinking about this correctly? What should I do? Yes, you are definitely thinking about this correctly because the way she's acting is insane. For starters, the fact that she's trying to guilt trip you into coming back and saying things like, oh, you don't love me, you never love me, you're just not gonna forgive me, are you? It's like, what are you talking about? You're the one that walked out on the original poster. Like, he's left standing there being like, wait a second, why are you leaving me? And then she's gonna turn around and be like, wow, if you don't let me back in your life, you've clearly not forgiven me. And if I was in your shoes, I would just respond and be like, yeah, you're right, I don't forgive you. And also, no, I don't love you anymore. Someone like this, in my opinion, is clearly grasping at smoke. They realize that they screwed up their life and they missed out on the one good thing they had going on, namely the original poster. So in my opinion, I think it's time to block this lady and move on with your life. At least that's what I would do. She's clearly trying to weasel her way back into your life, but like seriously, why would you want that back? She's already broken your heart once. Why let her do it a second time? Because her behavior, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate, and there's absolutely no reason why you should put yourself through that ever again. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my family and move on with my life after the way they've treated me throughout my entire childhood? Here's what happened. I'm 26 years old and I have degrees in engineering and an MBA. My parents married late and had difficulty having children, so they adopted my cousin who became my stepsister. I remember being constantly criticized, called ugly, and compared unfavorably to others, which made me feel very inadequate. My father used fear and false pride to manipulate me. Despite this, I tried to brag about him to my friends. My stepsister and I never got along, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and always needed approval. When I tried to talk about their mistakes, my stepsister and mother would use shame to silence me. They labeled me as a troublemaker, which made me very angry and very sad. School was also tough, because I had to do well to protect my family's reputation, and even though I was good at music, they always criticized me. Over time, I realized I hadn't pursued any of my dreams. My father made me choose a career that was easy for him, but not what I wanted. Even though I studied hard, I failed subjects that I just didn't care about. I felt overwhelmed and blamed all the time. I tried to help out by fixing and cleaning their cars, but I couldn't afford to fix the big problems, like a broken windshield wiper or maybe some dents. While my friends got new bikes and cars from their parents, I had to make do with an old car and a scooter, even though I felt like I deserved so much better. When I tried to help my stepsister stay away from bad relationships, she and my mother made fun of me instead. My mother used my stepsister to control my father, who drinks way too much and doesn't do his part around the house. And right now, with all things considered, I just feel so trapped. My father uses money to control me and threatens to kick me out if I don't do what he wants. My mother doesn't say anything about his drinking problem and acts completely unpredictably. Sometimes she's nice, and other times she's irritated and just ignores me. They both had good jobs in the government, and I just think that I should have my own house by now. They don't understand the job market and inflation in India, and they don't listen when I try to explain. They just talk over me with their own ideas. My self-esteem is getting worse. People notice that I've lost weight and I look tired, so I'm honestly wondering, should I quietly plan to leave, or would that be a selfish thing for me to do? I'm worried that I might lose control of my emotions, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think it would be a bad idea to get out of that house, because it sounds like your mom and your dad are just not really nice people at all. They're super controlling and they're not allowing you to live your own life. And this isn't a situation where you don't have like some way of making money and living on your own. Like, you quite literally have everything laid out in front of you, where you really could have your own life and your own house that you can live in. But for some reason, your parents are holding you back and like keeping you down. And that is really weird in my opinion, and I just don't think you deserve that. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be trying to move out, because the way they're treating you is really mean and, in my opinion, incredibly unacceptable. My entitled, narcissistic mother has been awful to me my entire life, and after dealing with her for so long, I'm seriously at my breaking point, because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm living with my parents in a city with a high cost of living and very bad housing situation. It is a small 2-bedroom apartment with 1 den, and my dad generously gave me the bedroom, while my mom took over the master bedroom. And this story is all about my mom. Now, I won't get into the bag of spiky worms that was growing up with her as a mom, but I'll mention some things to give you an idea of who she is. When I was 7, I lived in a big house, and I always felt alone because my mom would take long naps in her bedroom. She was likely depressed, but after watching TV for hours, I would jump in bed and nap with her looking for some kind of affection. Well, this is one of my earliest memories. Most of the time, she would halfway wake up, realize that it is me, and then proceed to tell me that she didn't want me and how sorry she was that I was even born. And throughout my life, she would escalate to screaming and guilt-tripping over every little thing. For example, she lost her phone pretty much every day when I was in high school, and after looking around the couches, she would dramatically sigh and mumble to herself until I asked her what was wrong. She would then ask me to help her look for her phone, and I usually would. But if I ever said no, like if I was doing maybe like homework or doing laundry, she would start complaining about how I'm a bad daughter who never helps her and is always selfish. Then she'll say, "Fine, I'll never help you out with anything if you need it." And this is all over a misplaced phone. Not to mention that asking her to do anything, including cleaning up her own spills or candy wrappers, was like pulling donkeys into a ditch. She often makes herself out to be a better person than she actually is. And since she has a shrill voice and screamed nearly every day of my childhood, I now absolutely detest loud noises. Perhaps more relevant is her relationship to my dad. According to her, my dad cheated on her before I was born with a dirty woman, and she wanted to divorce him but stayed for my brother and me, which is complete BS, because she probably just enjoyed spending his money in comfort. She often bragged about how she used to date doctors and lawyers, especially when we went through some financial trouble a few years back, and how she could be living better than she does now. I have a feeling that she stayed with him because he is somewhat of a pushover, who she verbally and sometimes physically hurts. And at this point, it's too late for a fresh start. She's the type to constantly ask him to buy sweets for her, complain about her colleagues, and get upset if my dad doesn't understand the occupational jargon that she uses, or even that he can't even read her mind. If she does her own laundry, she can leave her clothes in the washer for hours on end before he comes home and reminds her, but then she would tell him to do it for her. Now, I was often the one who had to do it for her because I also need to do my own laundry, and she would say stuff like, "Why won't you help your mom out this once?" But you know what? With all things considered, I just stopped talking to her about a year ago. She has always had an explosive temper, a persecution complex, and narcissistic tendencies, and I'm still trying to deal with my own personality problems that have all come up after being raised to not speak up for myself and to deal with conflict very poorly. But I've been doing what I can to pretend like she doesn't exist. Now, we've moved around a lot, at least 8 times in my life, and almost every house we would have a period of dealing with ants. In our last place, we were fine. That is, until she left out a cup of soda or juice, and the ants just came in overnight. It seemed like I was the only one who cared there were ants crawling around the dining table, and eventually it was all over our bathrooms, which continued for several months. In our current apartment, we had been ant-free for 10 months, which I'd been pleased by, but today I was doing my laundry, and I noticed a line of ants coming out of my mom's room, and I honestly feel so frustrated. I know her room is pretty filthy, just from seeing her bring all of her food. From her dinner to Indian food to cookies, it all came down to the fact that she had very poor hygiene. But now she is making it everyone else's problem because we have ants on the loose and they may wander into my bedroom next. I feel like she should have prevented this issue by doing the responsible thing and literally just cleaning up after herself. It annoys me all the more because I had been doing good at keeping bugs at bay, but now she will just yell at us if we get mad at her or even tell her to just clean up. She'll probably just give a disinterested, "Oh, okay," especially when my dad mentions the ants, and then expect us to do something about it, which we will do something about it. But still, her attitude just never fails to irritate me. So I'm honestly so frustrated, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your mom does not sound like a good person, and I can completely understand why you would feel frustrated living with this lady. Like, just imagine dealing with that on a daily basis. Here you are trying to just live your life, and she's sitting there and being like, "Oh my god, how on earth can all of this be so bad?" So truly, I don't blame you for being upset, and I know if I was in your shoes, I definitely would be trying to move out as soon as possible. An entitled couple always comes into our restaurant and then seats themselves immediately upon arrival, messing up our seating chart and making our lives incredibly difficult. Here's what happened. Okay, so we have this entitled old couple that comes into our restaurant every few weeks. They're always rude to the staff, they ignore us, and they seat themselves wherever they feel like. And on top of that, they complain about the music volume and the temperature of the restaurant. We are a full-service, moderately upscale establishment that is usually booked at least 75% full on a slow night. Our floor plan is painstakingly planned, and these people come in and screw it up week after week. One night, we saw that they had a 4 p.m. reservation right when we opened, and the entire front house decided to disarm them with kindness and even give them a nice table. We saw them pull up, and we all stood at the host stand ready to greet them and to seat them at the table. And this was including the chef and the owner. One of the servers gets the door for them and welcomes them in, and lets them know to go see me at the host stand and she will seat you. Well, instead, these people walked right by all of us standing there and hightailed it to the table of their choosing in the other room. We all looked at each other dumbfounded, but somewhat not surprised. Well, I decided I was not going to follow them with the menus, and everyone agreed with my stance. Finally, after some time, the husband comes to the host stand when nobody had approached them for several minutes. Having enough of these people, I respond by saying, typically when you come in to eat at a restaurant, you check in with the host who seats you. Well, this guy says nothing and sits back down as I place the menus on the table. Fast forward to a few weeks later, and they come in on a busy Saturday night. The staff sees them coming up the walk, and we all jump in and cut them off. We say to them, "Hi, how are you doing today? Follow me this way." And they have no choice but to comply. While I settle them into the table, a woman who's with them asks me, "Well, why can't we have a window?" But I simply say, "I'm sorry, but this is all we have available at this time." And then I go on my merry way. Fast forward to today, and the entitled husband leaves a review that claims the hostess needs some polishing, and that they were scolded by me after being told to seat themselves, among other complete lies. They also wanted some longer explanation of why the window table was not available. It's clear that these people have never worked in a restaurant a day in their lives, and I was not about to go into great detail about how seating charts work. The restaurant went through somewhat of a big transition over the last few years, where we changed the menu and the vibe to try and get these kind of people to go somewhere else. But as you can see, it didn't work on everyone, because these people have been the bane of my existence for far too long. Okay, this is so annoying to deal with. If I worked at this restaurant and these customers were allowed to just run amok and do whatever they wanted, I think I would absolutely lose my mind. Like, this is straight up a management issue. Management is not doing anything to try and reinforce their rules, and they're bending to these stupid people simply because they're regulars. Like, that is not how it should work at all. A simple conversation could probably fix all of this right away, because at the end of the day, this entitled couple are literally guests at your restaurant. So for them to act as if they can do whatever they want and just completely mess up the seating chart, which I totally understand by the way, is completely unacceptable and is something that definitely should never be happening. An entitled restaurant owner interrupts our performance to try and make some awful remarks about me, but thankfully I had my teacher by my side as he humiliated this owner in a way that I'm sure he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I was in a traditional kung fu school for 9 years, and my teacher was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school, there are certain etiquettes you have to follow out of both respects for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, we were not just teaching students here. We fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers and sisters. One of the rules was that men wore their sashes on the right side, while women wore their sashes on the left. Now, for context, I am a trans male, and my teacher was one of the few people who knew about this. Also, I present very androgynous. My teacher and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school, and we both agreed that neither of us really cared about how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit, and it was honestly a very friendly conversation. At my school, we did a traditional performance every year for Chinese New Year called a Lion's Head Dance. If you look it up online, it's both intriguing and hilarious to watch because it's essentially two people underneath a large, fluffy, papier-mâché lion. We would do this for restaurants, schools, and event centers. We even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is the head of the lion while the other operates the tail, and we work together to cleanse the space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment, and so that we can scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funniest performances I'd ever done. We have drums and dancing and firecrackers. I mean, we have the whole deal. I was almost always in a line with my teacher because we made a surprisingly good team. One year, we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing, and when we get there, we set up and lay out the equipment and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was with one lion, with me in the tail and my teacher in the head. As we're talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my teacher and I with the most disappointed look on his face. My teacher asked if everything's all right, and this guy just started in on my teacher through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my teacher while very confused, said that I was operating the tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman shouldn't be in the performance and should never be in the lion. Now, my teacher, with a deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, "We don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student and I am their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school." The owner kept on going off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how I shouldn't even be in the show because I was female. My teacher then looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin on his face and said, "Okay, no problem." He then turned to me and grabbed my sash, twisted it to my right side, bowed, and then addressed me in Chinese as younger brother. And he did this all before turning back to the owner. This guy had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took everything in me to not just bust up laughing. The owner huffed and told us to just do the show and then stormed off. And just as a little cherry on the top of this interaction, I went to put on the tail of the costume, and my teacher stopped me and motioned for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got to lead the show that night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he didn't get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my teacher, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students. And at the end of that night, thankfully the owner didn't say a word. Okay, I think the biggest thing that came out of this for me is the fact that your teacher is really supportive. They had your back pretty much in the face of some weird animosity, and he put that guy in his place in a way he definitely deserved. So good for the both of you for having such good teamwork, and for you to have somebody on your side that truly cares about you. An entitled jerk screams at me through the bathroom stall, furious with me that I took a bathroom break from my job instead of providing customer service for him exactly when he needed it. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm working overnight at a DoubleTree Inn last night, and by 1:30 in the morning, there was one reservation left to check in. Thinking they probably weren't going to show up, I decided that this was a good time for a bathroom break. So I put up the "Be Back Soon" sign, and I head off to the men's restroom. Now, I'll spare you the details, but as I was halfway through, someone literally walked into the men's restroom and then started screaming, "I need to check in. Is anybody here?" For a moment, I was too surprised to properly answer, but my customer service mask went on quick enough for me to respond. I said to them, "I'll be glad to help you once I'm finished. Please just wait at the desk and I'll be there soon to help you out." Well, that's when this entitled jerk marched up to my stall door. "You're supposed to be at the desk. I need to check in right now. I've been driving for 12 hours. Now, in response, I just continued my business. Because you know what? I have no work remorse. And this guy is probably the most inconsiderate person I've ever heard of in my life. I then finally say, "I'll be glad to help you once I'm finished, sir. Please wait at the desk and I'll throw in a free breakfast for your trouble." He backs up from the stall door but doesn't leave the men's restroom as I literally finish my business and get my pants on. I exit the stall and there he is. Some 90-year-old white guy wearing khaki shorts with a polo shirt and grass-stained white sneakers. Just skin and bones and a deranged sense of entitlement. While I walk to the sink so I can wash up, he continues his tirade. "When I was your age, people stayed at their stations. They did their jobs. They weren't hiding out in the bathroom. Why weren't you there? Why wasn't anyone there?" Ignoring him, I wash up, dry off, and I exit. I then walk to the front desk with this idiot almost jogging to keep up with me. As I make it back to the desk, he's gasping for air as I try to do the usual check-in routine. I get his ID, his credit card, and his room preferences. He then screams at me, "I want a room on the top floor overlooking the river." But I just look at him and I say, "I'm sorry, sir. All we have are rooms on the second floor facing the parking lot. You're all checked in. Here's your room keys." He then took his luggage cart and he went upstairs. And I thought that was the end of it, but apparently my general manager just texted me about this. It's almost 11 a.m. and he wanted an email report about the interaction. Because apparently this entitled old jerk literally wrote a bad review about our location 2 days before he was supposed to check out. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction because this guy was completely out of line. Okay, personally, I can deal with a lot of customer interactions, but the second anybody tries to find me in the bathroom to yell at me for not doing my job, that is when the gloves are off. That is such an inappropriate thing to do to somebody, it is not even funny. Can you imagine being so entitled that you scream at somebody for going to the bathroom? And I'm willing to bet that the original poster was not gone that long. They literally stepped away for just a second so they could take care of their business. Meanwhile, he's got this entitled jerk breathing down his neck the entire time. So honestly, I think you handled this way better than I would have handled it, because this guy's behavior absolutely deserved to be corrected. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Would I be the jerk if I I filled in a man-made pond on my property that has been driving me crazy ever since I found out that I owned it. Because right now, my neighbors are angry with me for wanting to get rid of this pond, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for the past several years, I've owned a property in a semi-rural area. It is part of an HOA with only 12 houses over 1,000 acres, so we don't get much in each other's way. There is a common area that butts against my property, and on it there is a pond that's fed via an irrigation headgate on a creek on my property, as well as a cut that runs from it through my property. Well, I've come to discover that this pond is a real pain. Our previous neighbor used to maintain it without making a fuss, but he recently passed away. So dealing with it fell to me as the neighbor most affected by it, and it is an absolute pain. People trespass to go fishing or have their dogs swim in it. People have also come from outside to ice skate on it, which is totally not safe. It has silting problems, the headgate needs to be dug out every spring, sometimes multiple times, the cut clogs up and it has to be cleared. Then a beaver took up residence and kept blocking the outflow culvert, which then caused flooding on a neighboring farmer's land. And he was rightfully pissed off, and I got the blunt end of it. I was clearing out beaver blockages several days a week, and nobody else in the HOA would help. I did some research, and I discovered that the water right from the headgate belongs to me alone and not the association. There was no easement for the irrigation cut, and as a cherry on the sundae, the pond is actually on my property and not common area. And I even had a survey done just to be sure. I also discovered it really wasn't a pond. It was a hole dug up to provide fill for our road, and the original developer just routed irrigation into the hole and said, oh, okay, this is a pond. So this kind of explains why it's always such a mess. A landowner a mile away is now digging out a proper pond, and he has to pay a ton to dispose of the fill even though it is clean. So I asked if it would help if he could just put some of the fill in our pond, and he offered to pay for the privilege. I have closed the headgate and started draining the pond, and now some members of the HOA have been yelling at me that they like the pond, but you know, just to look at as they drive out the main road and not to maintain it. So I said, okay, if you like it, just pay up $10,000 a year for someone else to deal with this nonsense. Well, as you can probably imagine, they refused. So I said, in that case, the pond is getting filled in, and it's going to be planted with native grass, and I'm going to be using the money from taking the fill. They're now calling me a selfish jerk and saying that I shouldn't be doing this. So I really need to know, would I be the jerk if I filled in this man-made pond? What should I do? It is so comical to me that the HOA is like, no, don't get rid of it, we like to look at it. But as soon as you ask for any kind of help, whether physically or monetarily, they suddenly take a step back and they're like, oh no, I don't actually want to help. I just want to look at it from the road when I drive by. And that is seriously so obnoxious, especially because this is on your property. People are cutting through your yard just to go there and go ice skating on it, or like have their dog swim in it. Like, just from the sounds of it, that does not sound like a clean body of water. So I don't blame you for wanting to fill this in, because from the sounds of it, it doesn't seem like the HOA is going to help you out in the slightest. Am I the jerk for snapping at my husband in front of his family after he tried to take credit for me learning how to drive? Because in reality, he made this process so much harder than it needed to be. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so for my entire life, I've had a lot of anxiety when it comes to driving. It has never been too much of a problem, as I live in a city and I can walk wherever I need to go. I've also been married to my husband, who we will call Stan, for 3 years now, and we've been together for 6 years. Throughout our relationship, he has tried to help me learn how to drive, but the problem is that Stan is not a very good teacher, and he gets very impatient and angry every time we try. And for reference, I'm 30 years old. We go to the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse sometimes, and it's huge. And if I make one small mistake, for example, if I don't check my mirrors for a long enough time, Stan will yell at me. Now, I would already be nervous at the wheel, but with all the yelling, it would cause me to break down and cry. I have a brother who we will call Paul, who I typically hang out with once a week. A few months ago, I was talking to Paul about how I want to learn how to drive. He offered to help teach me when we hang out, and Paul's husband, who we will call Chris, also was willing to help me out, and they actually made me feel so much more at ease behind the wheel. So I thought I was bad at driving, but it turns out I was just anxious. Another factor that made me want to learn, besides feeling like I need to do this, is that Stan has told me that he won't have a child with me until I get my license, which I definitely understand. So 2 weeks ago, on my day off from work, Paul and Chris took me to the DMV and I finally got my license. I also bought a used car a few days ago from money that I've been saving up for years, and I'm just so happy to have had the support of my brother and his husband. Now, I thought Stan would be mad that I did all of this behind his back, and he was somewhat disappointed that I didn't want his help. I love him so much, but honestly, he wasn't the right teacher for me. So anyway, anyways, fast forward to Sunday, and Stan and I both had off from work, and he told me that he had a little surprise for me. He took me to his parents' house where they had a celebration for me, which was basically just a little party congratulating me because I learned how to drive. Halfway through, my mother-in-law was giving a speech about how proud she was of me, but also how she was proud of my husband for all the support and lessons he was giving me. Now, when she said this, I could feel the anger rising in my chest. Stan had been telling everyone that he was the one who had been teaching me to drive, so I just finally snapped. I told everyone that anytime Stan tried to teach me how to drive, I always ended up crying because he would yell at me until he was blue in the face, and that the only people who helped me and gave me confidence were Paul and Chris, and that if anything, Stan made things way worse for me, which was the absolute truth. But now, ever since I said that, Stan won't talk to me. My in-laws are on my side, but my two brother-in-laws and a couple of cousins are on Stan's side. I do kind of feel like a jerk, but at the same time, everything I said was true. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. The fact that your husband seriously tried to take credit for something he was only making worse, in my opinion, is super toxic. Like, he has no right to try and stake a claim over your success. Chris and Paul are the only reason you were able to get this done, and Stan was only making it worse by pressuring you and screaming at you. And here's the thing, I don't care who you are or what you're trying to learn. If someone's going to be screaming at you and freaking out on you when you're trying to learn something new, that is not going to help you get things figured out. Like, this is not the military. He's not some drill sergeant and she's just trying to learn how to drive. So his aggressive impatience is so uncalled for. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have called him out in the exact same way as well, because he's seriously hindered your ability to learn how to drive. And under no circumstances does he ever have the right to take credit for your hard work. My sister and my mother have absolutely zero respect for my privacy, as they are constantly opening my packages as well as barging into my room without knocking. And it's all driving me insane, and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so at this point, this has all been going on for years. For the longest time, I've tried to get my sister and mom to respect my privacy, most notably in regards to not opening my packages and not walking into my room unannounced. Every single time I try and get them to respect these, it turns into them going completely on the defensive, where they'll try to claim that I'm trying to hide something, or that they're just trying to make conversation with me. A favorite of theirs is claiming that I'm being ignorant in the way that I tell them it's private, and that I'm just trying to get a rise out of them by making jokes. Now, for context, I've told them in a joking way a few times that I want privacy, but only because I was hoping they'd listen to me if I did that, since they weren't listening to me when I was being serious. In their eyes, though, they are listening to me, because now, instead of opening my packages, they wait for me to come home from work or whatever and want me to tell them what it is and then show them. And if I say no, I get shouted at and name called. In regards to bursting into my room, I told them to knock, which they now thankfully do. Except what happens now is they either knock, wait for my response, and regardless of the response, they walk in anyways, or they just knock and walk in without even waiting for me to reply. In fact, earlier today, I got into another argument over this with both of them. I ordered a package for my girlfriend and they asked what it was. Now, to be fair, it said perfume in small writing on the box, so they already knew what it was. And honestly, it wouldn't have bothered me showing it to them, but I've gotten sick of their nosiness, so again, I wouldn't tell them. Well, they decided to name call me, saying awful things to me over and over again. Then, when I tried explaining to them again about my privacy and my packages, and how I want them to respect my privacy, they pretty much refused to acknowledge what I was requesting, and instead suggested to have my packages shipped to a P.O. box if I don't want them being nosy. And honestly, for the last few years, I have felt a sense of entitlement from the two of them, but this just confirms to me that this is exactly the way that they are. Yeah, your mom and sister are being super obnoxious and super nosy too. Like, there's no reason for them to be invading your privacy in this way, and in my opinion, I don't blame you for being upset. Like, if I was in your shoes and I was living in this kind of situation, I would be so frustrated every single day. Because sure, they're not looking in your packages right now, but like, who's to say they couldn't change their mind and start doing that tomorrow? And it's just so crazy to me that they can't just put it to the side and be like, oh, okay, this isn't mine. Like, why are they so obsessed about everything that you're doing? This is all just super inappropriate, and I really don't blame you for being frustrated. Am I the jerk for going to the police immediately once I found out that my parents racked up $60,000 in debt in my name? Here's what happened. Okay, so my parents took out credit cards and loans in my name, and it was fine while they were paying the bills, but they eventually got behind. I don't have a key to the mailbox, so I never saw the bills or anything. I just finished my third year of university, and I was going to move out, and that would require me to get a credit check and all this other stuff. Well, my parents freaked out and then forbid me from moving out. They said it was stupid that I would waste money on moving out when I could save money living at home. Now, they don't like my boyfriend, so I thought that was their issue, but my God, was I completely wrong. Long story short, I'm about $60,000 in debt because of them, and I cannot afford to pay that off. I told them that they needed to clear the debt immediately, and they needed to change the house rules so that my boyfriend could spend the night. They said that they didn't have the money to pay the debt, and that I could not strong-arm them into changing the rules of their house. I called my auntie and I asked her if I could please stay with her for a little bit, and while she did let me stay with her, she also asked a lot of questions. She then showed me dozens of Reddit posts about parents screwing up their kids' future, along with the kids just completely allowing it. So I made the decision to go to the police and report them. And as a result, my parents got arrested and were charged, and they're now very furious with me. I know they didn't spend the money on me, and I don't know what they spent it on, but I honestly don't care. In the end, I feel bad for them, but I'm not letting them mess up my future. So am I the jerk for reporting my parents and getting them in trouble? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, because your parents are completely out of line. They literally opened up credit cards and loans in your name. That is so illegal, it's not even funny. And also, I have to disagree with something you said in the beginning. You said that it was okay for them to do this because they were paying for all the bills. But even then, this is so illegal and not allowed. You can't do that to somebody because this is what can happen. They open up credit cards and rack up $60,000 in debt, and then suddenly you're the one left to deal with all the backlash. So no, of course you're not the jerk. Your mom and dad are completely out of line, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for not taking the blame for unknowingly breaking a mom's rules for her kid when she was having a sleepover? Because right now, this mom is incredibly pissed off at me, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my daughter had a sleepover a couple days ago with 4 of her friends. From what I observed, the girls had a lot of fun together, and they were all very respectful to each other, my husband, and myself. Most of the girls' parents thanked me and my husband for hosting and said positive things, but one texted me a list of all the things that I did wrong. The first thing that upset this mom was the fact that my daughter and her friends went swimming in our backyard pool. When the sleepover invites were sent out via text message, I asked the moms if they were okay with their girls going swimming. All of them said yes, or that's okay with me, except for the complaining mom, who simply liked my text instead of responding. And when she did this, I just assumed this meant yes. I would not have allowed this had the girls not been forced to pass a swimming safety unit, which included a swim test at the end for their PE class. Additionally, my husband completed a lifeguarding course from the Red Cross, and he passed with flying colors. The mom's second issue was the food that they ate, which she deemed to be completely unhealthy. I, however, did not see an issue with this because I think eating junk food at a sleepover is completely fine. The next issue was the movie the girls watched after dinner. Since some of the girls are 14 and others are 15, we told them no rated R movies. But other than that, it was completely up to them. They ended up choosing The Fault in Our Stars, which of course the complainer deemed inappropriate. The final thing that she was mad about was the fact that the girls didn't actually go to sleep until midnight. Now, as a mom myself, I understand, because I want my daughter to get enough sleep. However, both my husband and I do think that sleepovers are a time when it's okay to stay up late, provided the kids let the parents sleep, which my daughter and her friends absolutely did. Additionally, the girls woke up at 8:30, meaning they got well over 8.5 hours of sleep. I received the complaining mom's texts on the day after the sleepover, and the text said something like this: "Thank you for having my daughter over. It was generous of you to open up your home and graciously host her. However, I feel that many of your decisions were questionable and inappropriate." She then proceeded to list her objections with specific reasons for each one. I then replied by saying, "Please tell your daughter thanks for coming. She was a pleasure to host, and I do understand your concerns. But considering that you never communicated your expectations or rules, I don't think it's fair to place the blame on me. If we ever do things like this in the future, please make sure to let me know of any restrictions ahead of time. Thank you and have a lovely weekend." She then responded angrily that it was my fault, and when I texted her to say sorry, she didn't respond. So am I the jerk for not taking the blame? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. This other mom is being a complete moron. She's trying to blame you for something that she never specified. She's literally trying to hold this over your head and be like, wow, this was really inappropriate. But if it really was that big of a deal, then why would you not say something? Why not just speak up and be like, okay, here's a list of things I don't want my daughter doing at your house. And then I'm sure the original poster could have prepared for it in some kind of way. But for her to retroactively be offended at all the things that she's like, oh, I didn't like any of that, despite the fact that what they did really was not that big of a deal, in my opinion, is super toxic and really controlling. So no, you're definitely not at fault here, because the way that mom is acting overreacting is incredibly insane. Am I the jerk for kicking my brother out of my wedding after he proposed to his girlfriend during my reception? Because right now, my family is very divided on this, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I recently got married to my wonderful husband. We had a beautiful wedding that we spent a year planning and saving for. It was a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, followed by a reception at a lovely venue. And honestly, everything was going perfectly. That is, until my older brother decided to propose to his girlfriend during our reception. He didn't just propose quietly either. He made a big scene, getting down on one knee right in the middle of the dance floor, stopping the music and drawing everybody's attention. It felt like the whole entire reception shifted from celebrating our marriage to celebrating their engagement. So I was stunned, and I didn't know how to react at first. My husband was visibly upset, and I tried to keep my composure, but as the night went on, I grew increasingly frustrated. So I pulled him aside, and I told him that I thought that what he did was incredibly disrespectful and very selfish. I asked him to leave the reception because I just didn't want any more drama. When I said that, he was shocked and said that I was overreacting, and that it was just a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing. And when I looked over at his girlfriend, she looked incredibly embarrassed. They both eventually left, but now my family is divided. Some of them think I was right to stand up for myself, while others think I overreacted and should have just let it go. My brother has since apologized, but I can't shake the feeling of having my special day overshadowed. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong. Your brother literally proposed during your wedding reception. Like, I don't know about you, but that is the last place you ever want to propose to your girlfriend. Like, this quite literally took away from your big day, and he basically drew all the attention to him and his girlfriend instead of keeping it on you and your husband. And that, in my opinion, is so toxic. And you know what? I think he's completely lying when he's like, oh, this was just spur of the moment. Like, this is not some kind of like spur of the moment situation. This is very much premeditated, and it's something he probably planned from the beginning. And that really sucks for you. Like, seriously, that's just awful. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would have kicked him out as well. What he did is completely inappropriate, and anyone trying to justify that as well, in my opinion, is completely in the wrong. My entitled mother-in-law tries to take over my wedding, demanding that my wedding be catered to what she thinks would be good, and refused to listen to anybody else anytime they said literally anything. But after listening to this and putting up with this garbage for long enough, I decided to put my foot down and put her in her place. And now, after she stormed out of the building, I feel like I'm at a crossroads with my mother-in-law because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. For a bit of background, my fiance and I have been together for 10 years, and we are getting married in September. His entire family waited that long, and we were only 16 when we got together. We're sticking to the classic college, marriage, and family plan. His mom, who's 62 years old, has been a unique character since I met her. She's goofy, well-spoken, and easy to talk to most of the time, though she is a bit more stiff than my family. We've never had any issues and have always gotten along really great. I love her, and she's told me that she sees me as family already and have for several years before we even got engaged. Now, it is notable that she is almost entirely deaf without her hearing aids, and even with them, she doesn't do great. We're used to speaking a bit slower and more clearly for her, and have no problem repeating things if need be. My fiance has a sister who's in college and not currently looking for a relationship, so she probably won't be planning a wedding for a while. Given how close my mother-in-law and I really are, I wanted to include her in my bridal shopping, and we both tried to include our parents in what we can. Now, my mom and grandma attended my bridal appointment with me because my mother-in-law was apparently sick and didn't want to get my grandmother ill, so she texted me the morning of to tell me that she would understand if I rather she not come because of this. My grandma is in remission after her third battle with breast cancer and is well into her 70s, so I agreed that maybe this would be for the best. I wound up finding my dress that same day, and I had a beautiful moment with my mom and grandma, and I wish she could have been there. But then later on Facebook, I see that she felt well enough to go out to an event with a bunch of her friends, and she definitely didn't look sick in any of the photos. Now, our wedding venue also has decor that we can choose from, and they will decorate it for us. So the owner invited us over to make a timeline for the wedding day and to iron out just a few details. And you know what? The issue started before we even met. She was made aware of the appointment well in advance and was very excited to come. I made sure to text her a week before and 3 days before to remind her, as is the standard procedure when making plans with her because she tends to be forgetful. So I'm sitting in the living room playing Baldur's Gate 3, and I can hear my fiance on the phone with her upstairs. We each call our moms at least once a week to chat, and he has a tendency to wander around the house when he does so. I could hear the conversation that he was having just at the top of the stairs, and I overheard overheard her over the speakerphone telling him that his father was coming home on Wednesday, and they wanted to watch a shuffleboard competition. That's right, they wanted to watch it and not play in it. She then asked him to ask me to reschedule for another day so she could watch shuffleboard. He politely told her if she had other plans and couldn't make it, it was completely fine. She legitimately didn't have to come, and not in a rude way, as she really did know that. Well, she insisted that she does have to come to the appointment, and again asked him to ask me to reschedule the entire thing. So she feels she has to come along but make no attempt to prioritize it. I could not believe that she had the audacity to ask that everyone move their plans around for a shuffleboard game. I didn't even know they had any interest in it. Like, this literally was out of the blue. Naturally, we invited our parents to the appointment at the venue, and his dad travels for work, so it wound up being his mom and my parents. The venue owner, let's call her Jenny for the sake of the story, is a fun, easygoing, dorky, laid-back person, and she is great. She is just like me, and we have so much in common. We were all sitting around a table making our game plan for the wedding, choosing tablecloth colors and whatnot, and it was all okay, even with the minor hiccups caused by my mother-in-law's somewhat choppy social skills, which is partially due to the fact that only one of her hearing aids was working that day. This meant that Jenny had to repeat herself several times, re-explain the same thing immediately afterwards, even with us trying to help her out by re-explaining to my mother-in-law. Jenny was extremely professional, but she seemed a bit uncomfortable as time went on, and my mother-in-law kept low-key trying to make the decision for us. Jenny kept trying to redirect the conversation and politely remind her that the choices were for my fiance and I to make, and she was implying that we had plenty of time to figure out the specifics and it didn't need to be decided right now. They'll make what we tell them and then supply it, so there's no need to know just yet. Now, my mother-in-law got to meet the drunk version of me at a wedding a few months ago, and we talked and had a great time. She showed me a new kind of cocktail and was really pushing to have it at my wedding as well. And granted, the drink was good, but it's not really my favorite, and I really don't think I want it as one of the featured drinks at my wedding, and I politely said no to that suggestion. But she kept bringing it up and just kept pushing about it. Now, I'm not a bridezilla, but honestly, after so many polite shutdowns, I put my foot down and firmly said no. And honestly, I might have even snapped at her. But this is the one day where I'm allowed to be selfish. The one day where I don't have to make allowances for my mother-in-law like everyone usually does. For once, what I say absolutely goes, so I just said no. Later, Jenny asked if we were doing the shoe game, the dollar dance, candle lighting, or anything else like that. My mother-in-law tried to persuade me to do the candle thing, but I'm honestly not interested. Again, I politely said I don't think I want to do it, and we did discuss what it usually entails, and it confirmed that neither I nor my fiance really wanted to do that. I said that we really want photos like that where we can just do it in nice clothing in the summer, but I don't want to do it in my wedding day. But she just kept on pushing it. I know she meant well, but I turned it down several times before I again firmly said no. I didn't raise my voice, but I just spoke confidently. My parents know I have always known what I want and don't want, and honestly, I thought my mother-in-law knew that too. My mom was proud of me for standing up for myself for once and just taking charge. It all came to a head when we were discussing what to do with the bar options. We decided to go with the one where we provide the alcohol and choose a few drinks to feature at the reception, with Jenny being willing to supply some bartenders. As my mother-in-law is trying to dominate the conversation, she's leaning closer and closer to Jenny, who is, by the way, getting increasingly uncomfortable. She never raised her voice, but she kept pressing the issue of wanting and expecting Jenny to have a list of drink suggestions. Now, she did say that people do vodka or whiskey, but she didn't suggest anything specifically because it isn't her specialty and it's our choice. And she had to repeat this several times, explaining that there was plenty of time for us to discuss it. And she tried to move along to the next item, but my mother-in-law just kept pressing about it. My mother-in-law isn't very observant and isn't very good at reading the room. We could all feel the tension rising as Jenny got more and more uncomfortable with my mother-in-law, showing very obvious signs of anxiety. Both my fiance and I tried explaining again and trying to get her to move on from the specific drinks that don't really matter yet. I mean, the wedding isn't September. Finally, Jenny cracked. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, this is feeling very hostile." And she was trying to avoid looking at my mother-in-law, who immediately got offended. My mother-in-law then said, "Do you feel like I'm attacking you?" Jenny then said, "Yes, I do." And poor Jenny is visibly shaken as she stands up for herself in as calm of a manner as she possibly can. She has anxiety just like me, and neither of us were doing that well. And we made it about 45 minutes into the appointment. My mother-in-law then gets angry and says, "Oh, just because I'm asking about drinks?" She then proceeds to slam her hands down on the table, echoing very loudly in the barn venue, and grabs her coat. Now, I do do not handle stress well and immediately teared up with a double order of nausea. She then started screaming, "Fine, if I'm not wanted, then I'll go." And then she stomped out of the building. I proceeded to try and fail not to cry, while Jenny apologized a million times and said that she hopes we don't think she's some kind of jerk. She even said that my mother-in-law could have been stressed from only having one hearing aid in and struggling to try and keep things straight. Jenny still tried to defend my mother-in-law and try to explain her actions away in some kind of way. Once I calmed down, the rest of the appointment went really smoothly, and we actually had a great time. Jenny is like the sister I never had, and my fiance was happy to give her advice on what dirt bike to get her 10-year-old kid. The air felt so much different and so much better once my mother-in-law left the room. The next day, she called my fiance and asked me to come over so that she could talk to him, and she only wanted him to be there. According to him, she insists that Jenny overreacted and that she was the one in the wrong, that the change was sudden and that she had no idea things were tense. But everyone else knew it. We kept exchanging looks and trying to move things along. She also told him that I hurt her feelings when I shut down all of her suggestions, namely the candle thing and the cocktails, and when I told her I don't really care for the drink that much. I mean, I didn't realize that it meant that much to her, and that she felt like we bonded over a drink. My mom pointed this out to me later, and I do feel bad, and I did see it on her face when I put my foot down. Now, I think this is the first time that my mother-in-law witnessed me taking a stand and like sticking to what I want to do, so you know what? I will apologize, but only after she does. So I need to know, am I the jerk for refusing to apologize first, or even offer an olive branch of some kind? What should I do? No, I do not blame you for not wanting to apologize first, because seriously, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not the one that stormed out of the appointment after freaking out on everybody. That definitely was your mother-in-law last I checked. And it was so totally obvious that your mother-in-law was trying to take over your wedding. She kept pushing for things that you didn't want to do, and it's almost like she wanted everything to be her way or the highway. And it was all over these super specific things, and that's just super annoying. Now, the original poster did give us an update, where apparently they got a birthday card with an apology from the mother-in-law, but there was no like actual admission of wrongdoing. It was mostly just her saying something like, "Oh, I'm sorry for how things went down at the venue, and I'm looking forward to your wedding day." So I honestly think that's like the best we're gonna get when it comes to an apology, because the way this mother-in-law was acting was incredibly obnoxious, and there is literally no good excuse for that kind of behavior. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for getting angry at my family after they went on a cruise without me and intentionally left me out of all of their plans? Here's what happened. So my sister called me about 2 weeks ago and said on the phone that she had something she was excited about coming up, but she couldn't tell me. Now, I'm not the type of person to pry, so I just moved on without any question. A day or two later, I check her Snapchat story, and she is on a cruise, and I didn't think much of it. But on a call with my mother shortly afterwards, she informed me that she was on the cruise with my dad, my uncle, and my 3 cousins. For context, my parents are divorced, and everyone on the cruise lives in Georgia while I live in Florida where I'm going to college. A few days later, my sister calls me after docking on the Virgin Islands where she got service, and the first thing she says is that my dad won't tell her what he knows about me being gay. And for reference, I came out to my dad recently, but my sister has known for several years. After a bit of small talk, I ask her why I wasn't invited on the cruise, and she essentially says that she didn't think I could afford it. I told her it wasn't her place to assume my financial situation, and it would have been at least polite to invite me. I later learned that she had told everybody, including my close friends, and told them not to inform me, and she also said that the cruise was $3,000 a person. I also asked her why they decided to go on a 9-day cruise without me when we have been talking about going on a deep-sea fishing trip for several years now. And this is especially true since I moved to Florida. This is a very reasonable activity as I live on the coast, and there are charters within walking distance from my home that only charge you about $300 with all the equipment provided. This was a trip I had invited the whole family on, and something I had been wanting to do to ideally work on repairing mine and my father's already damaged relationship. She told me they would still come on the fishing trip, to which I responded by saying that I no longer wanted to go on it with them, and that if I went, they were no longer invited. She then said she still wanted to come visit me in Florida, and I said that if she came to Florida, then she needs to find a hotel, because she was not welcome at my place. They all got back a few days ago, and she hasn't called me, but has reached out to my mom to ask if I was still mad at her and my dad. It's frustrating to me because in the past, I have always been the person to come up and visit for the holidays, and when I've come up to visit around Christmas, she spends more time at her boyfriend's place or her friend's house than prioritizing spending spending time with me. Sometimes I would go, and the only time I would see her was when she would pick me up from the airport. And the time we would spend together, she doesn't plan any activity or have any meaningful conversation with me. I'm done going out of my way to visit them. I'm also not welcoming them into my home on the off chance they decide to come visit me either. I've been living out of state for 4 years now and living in Florida for 1, and I haven't had them visit me once, but I've been there for every single major holiday. So am I the jerk for being upset? Am I out of line for not wanting them to visit? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it really seems like they wanted to exclude you on purpose. And if that really is the case, then that is so toxic. Like, it doesn't seem like there's any good reason why that happened, but instead they just kind of went behind your back and said, okay, you're not going. And it's like, wait a second, I would have loved to go. For your sister to be like, oh, you wouldn't be able to afford that. That's why we didn't invite you. It's like, what are you talking about? The least you could have done was still invite me. Don't just not invite me because of some weird assumption you have. Like, that would really upset me if my family went on a cruise and said, oh, we didn't invite you because you're poor. Like, that reasoning alone would piss me off so badly. If my siblings said that, I would lose my mind on them. So I don't blame you for being upset about this, because in my opinion, they definitely did this behind your back, and you do not deserve this in the slightest. My mom is constantly making comments about everything that I wear, and it's really starting to make me mad, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm 29 years old, and I adore my mom, and I always will, but I need to know if I'm justified in being angry over this or not. Ever since I started working, making my own money, and buying myself things such as clothing or whatever, she has and is currently so suffocating with her comments and is constantly complaining. I used to hate it, but it's honestly even worse now. It is driving me utterly miserable, and I'm worried next time I will snap and say something that I'll regret. For example, last year the first occasion that really got to me was a new pair of shoes that I bought. They were very ugly, I know, but they were so comfortable, so I just didn't care. Our family was going to dinner that night, and when I arrived to the house beforehand, she commented on them. She was ranting and raving and calling them ugly and just straight up complaining. But it didn't stop there. For weeks afterwards, every time I wore them, she would keep making comments. I kept begging her to stop, saying that I don't care what she thinks, but she would say, well, you should care. Sometimes I just see her look me up and down and ask me, what are you wearing, in some kind of like derogatory term. In the winter, I sometimes wear an ugly wool jumper, and she'll say to me, it's time to dump it, it's not nice. Or she'll just straight up say, oh, I do not like that jumper. She constantly comments on my jewelry as well. One night I was working, and she was clearly looking in the door because the next morning when we were chatting, she was asking me what earrings I was wearing, because according to her, they looked big and stupid. A few weeks ago, when our family went on holidays, every single day she was making comments on my outfit. She would say something like, oh, don't wear that, wear this instead. And then if I would change after finally giving in, she would be like, oh, that's much better. In the summer, if I'm wearing trainers, she constantly just nags and says, why are you wearing sandals? But the worst of it was a couple of weeks ago during my birthday weekend, and I was working the actual day of my birthday, so the next day was the celebration. We got into an argument about something unrelated, and while I was off crying upset, she was in the kitchen screaming to my siblings. She was saying, oh, and did you see the state of her in the stupid top and those big shoes? And as a side note, those are shoes that she bought me. She was literally screaming because of some clothing that I was wearing, and I just could not believe it. If she doesn't like the color of my nails, she'll tell me that they're awful and that I shouldn't get them colored ever again. I joined late on holidays and I hadn't gotten my nails done beforehand, and one of the first things that she said was how awful the nails were and not to get them ever again. A few weeks ago, I came to the house wearing jeans or something like that, and one of the first things she said was, wow, why are you wearing that? I begged her to please just shut up, and she just started laughing and mocking me. I've never had an overriding desire to move out before, which I know is the solution here, but now I really want to. She's my mother and I do love her, but she is so suffocating. So seriously, am I doing something wrong here? I'm trying to save at the moment, which is why I still live at home, but I'm honestly at my breaking point and I really don't know what to do. Yeah, I really think your mom is a straight up bully. She is constantly saying awful things about the way you look, even though some of the things that you're wearing are literally things that she bought you. Like, that's the craziest part and probably the most ironic part in my opinion, because her complaints are literally about herself. So hopefully this gets better sooner than later, and that you can eventually have enough money to move out of your mom's house, because the way she's been treating you, honestly, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My partner won't do basic things in his life and is blaming that on having ADHD. And after dealing with this for so long, I'm now at the point where I'm considering calling off the wedding that we're planning for, because right now I am so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. happened. Okay, my partner and I have been together for 4 years, but we don't currently live together yet. And we are supposed to get married this winter, and we're gonna have something simple and small. Then, the plan was that I'd move in with him for now, and we'd look for a place to move to that would be more central for both of our jobs. My partner has ADHD and is medicated, and he is successful in his work. However, when it comes to a very basic task, he just simply won't do them and then blames his ADHD. I am really understanding, but sometimes it becomes so annoying. He simply will not clean anything. He does have a cleaning lady come once a week, so things are mostly fine, but there have been times when she's away, and in her absence, he does literally nothing. She has been gone for 3 weeks, and during that time, he just lets dishes build up in the sink, he does no laundry, he doesn't change his bedding, and he doesn't even take out the garbage. The one I have the hardest time with is that he will often be behind on invoicing clients. He doesn't want administrative help from other people, and if anything, he wants me to do it, but I also have a full-time job. He doesn't feel comfortable working with anyone else, and the invoicing does take a bit of time, but it's really no big deal. And he doesn't get paid unless he does it. But over and over, he is just months late and starts to run out of money, because also he has a massive issue with budgeting. I find this stressful, and it often will affect me, and sometimes he needs to borrow some money just until he gets paid. Each day I'll ask him if he's done any invoicing, and he'll just reply by saying nope, but even despite that, he still manages to go get his hair dyed, or get a massage, or go to the dentist, or do yoga. I try to be understanding, but I'm getting so tired of it. He acts childish about basic responsibilities, but then he'll tell me that he's able to be very successful at work, which is true if he could budget because he would be well paid off. I'm at the point in my frustration that I'm considering calling off the wedding, and maybe even breaking up with him, but I'm not sure if that is just because I'm feeling stressed out and frustrated, and that maybe there's some kind of workaround. I go back and forth in my mind between saying, okay, this is understandable for someone with bad ADHD, and I need to be more sympathetic and patient, while also saying, okay, this is ridiculous behavior for an adult. I appreciate any insight, especially from those who have ADHD, or someone who has partners who are dealing with that as well, because right now I'm at my breaking point, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Okay, first of all, I don't blame you for being really frustrated, because the way your partner is acting is completely inappropriate. Like, you guys are about to get married, and he can't do like these simple basic things. He's letting the house fall apart and make it into a pigsty, and he can't even do his invoicing correctly so that he can get paid for his work. Like, that, in my opinion, is the big one where it's like, wait a second, you are not being responsible right now. This is not very promising for a good future between the two of us, and that definitely needs to change. Now, on a personal note, I also have ADHD, and it is very annoying to deal with, but I've learned that it can be like an explanation for why I can't really get things done, but it is definitely not an excuse. There are so many tools available for someone to be a functional, fully responsible adult in society, and in my opinion, the fact that he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't do it because I have ADHD, like, that is such a massive cop-out, it is just not even okay. Also, for a bit of context, this guy is 43 years old, so in my opinion, that is just not a good excuse. I'm sorry, that just does not hold up in my opinion, because he is more than capable to get this stuff done, and I really think that if he's going to be your future husband, then he absolutely needs to be held to a higher standard. My toxic coworkers lied about me to my manager just so they would get me fired from my job, and now after leaving this restaurant job, I am still getting messaged by them and my former managers, claiming things about me that are blatantly untrue. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm just really baffled at how this situation was handled. At the beginning of my shift, the owner pulled me into another room and very rudely spoke to me about a Facebook comment I made that apparently made them look bad. In the comment, I was thanking someone for sending me a gift card because I had no money for food after I lost power and lost all my food after we got hit by a hurricane in Texas. I mentioned that I worked down the street from them and that I didn't want to rack up a tab at my job because I'm broke and our food is expensive. I wasn't talking garbage about the company or anything like that, and everyone who goes there already knows that the food is expensive, and that's why they go to the restaurant. I wasn't saying it in a bad way, but instead I was just stating that I am poor. Well, my reasoning just didn't matter because she was extremely flippant and clearly wasn't interested in anything I had to say. The owner said that if she sees anything like that again, then I won't be working there anymore. It was all just really rude and seemed childish and just so ridiculous, and I really did not take kindly to it. I don't feel like that's an acceptable way to speak to employees. I feel like she could have said something like, hey, I understand it wasn't your intention to make the restaurant look bad, but please be mindful about things like that in the future. And if she had just said that, then it would have been fine. She was saying things like, if you have a problem, you have my number. And to be honest, that sounds like something a 12-year-old would say. She also said to me that the food is expensive and that that's how you pay your bills. But my bills aren't even all paid for. Now, it's not as if they ever told us we can get a meal during the power outage, and they definitely didn't ask any of us if we were okay either. So I'm really not sure what's so bad about me stating that I'm poor in a random Facebook comment. Oh, and speaking of the power outage, when I came into work yesterday, the manager complained at me for coming in early. Like, what are you talking about? My power has been out for 3 days, and it's 100 degrees outside. I came in 9 minutes early to get some AC. I had to shower and get ready at a local gym. But apparently, me coming in 9 minutes early during this time is somehow an issue. And to be honest, I think they make themselves look bad on social media every single day, especially with the way they publicly respond to every negative review just to try and prove them wrong. No joke. Last week, someone left a 1-star review all because they had a bad takeout experience. And the owner actually replied to it by saying, "I hope you don't have a down moment in your life just to get a review stating that you're not good enough." Like, oh my god, are you a crybaby much? That customer is entitled to their review and their opinion. It just screams that they're insecure. And yet I'm the one who made them look bad and was immediately treated with hostility, all because I made a random comment that I can't afford the food after losing all of my food during a hurricane and multi-day power outage. In the server station afterwards, I said that she was being really rude about it and that I don't appreciate her claiming that all my bills are paid by them when they are definitely not. Unfortunately, this was my mistake for sharing an opinion in front of others, because one of these jerks went and told the owners that I called them an awful name and that I said they need to shut their mouths, which I never said. Now, the employee who ran and told on me had also previously been written up for an NDA violation, but her post was actually talking garbage about customers, and she said she refused to sign her write-up. The other owner pulled me outside, and I asked, "Okay, is this about the same Facebook comment?" And he said, "Yes, it is." Then he handed me a termination letter and said, "You can't call my wife the names that you did." And I was like, "No, I didn't. I didn't even call her anything. Do you want me to review the cameras?" But I just responded by saying I didn't see any cameras in there, but please go ahead. Well, no surprise here, but they did not review the cameras. Also, the camera was outside of the service station behind a curtain. Then he said I'm not allowed on the property and said to me, "Okay, well, how would you like it if I went to your house and called you awful names?" But I just said it wouldn't offend me because words like that just don't bother me. And I was just being honest. He then claimed that they gave me everything and they did everything for me. But it's like, what in the world do you expect me to do? This is a two-way street, mutual beneficial agreement. You give me employment, I give you time and labor. You are not giving me anything. You don't even pay me. I get like, what, $2 an hour? When I refused to sign the paper, he said it's my copy anyways, which is a complete lie. If it was my copy, you wouldn't be asking me to sign it. Anyways, I texted the manager and I asked about keeping my job, but she just flippantly replied that this was final, and obviously she just didn't care at all. It's like they all just switched up on me all of a sudden. I texted the 2 employees who I knew went and lied about me, and I told them that I don't appreciate them lying about me and for being fake. And then I just left it at that. I just needed them to know that I know. Now, they never replied, but then the manager texted me telling me that I'm supposedly harassing them and that they're gonna file a police report. I told him go ahead and that I did nothing wrong and that they cannot file a report on the employee's behalf. She then replied and claimed that the ex-chief of police is there and he said that they can file a report. And I just think that's another blatant lie. Also, ex-chief? Like, are you kidding me? I then turned the tables and I told her that she's harassing me and she stopped replying immediately. Like, yeah, the phone works both ways, sweetheart. Stop texting me on the employee's behalf. That is harassment. They also never told me to stop talking to them. They just went and ran to the managers again, which is kind of typical. As of now, even the employees that I considered friends have all completely blocked me, and I'm guessing that the owners told them to do that as well. When I wrote a comment on a different unrelated post about how they fired me, the owners had one of the server's mothers replying on their behalf, and she was just straight up lying. They claimed that I agreed about my comments during the meeting, but I did not agree. I upheld my stance that my comment was never intended to look negative the entire time. They claimed that I texted 3 employees and called them awful names, but I texted 2 employees who know I said something and told them that I didn't appreciate them, but I didn't call them any names, and I even offered screenshots. They're basically just lying out of their butts, and the way they're following all my comments is really creepy, considering the fact that I have them all blocked. It's like they all have their little friends monitoring me or something like that. It all screams as very insecure and very childish. much. And I'm honestly so sick of it because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Yeah, this is an awful situation, and I'm so sorry you have to deal with this. Like, seriously, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong. Even the initial comments that you put on Facebook itself, like, those are really tame. It doesn't seem like you said anything super sketchy, and it almost seems like the management was like looking for a reason to try and get rid of you. And they saw this one minor comment and they're like, there it is, that's what we can use against her. Like, that is honestly so obnoxious, and I just can't stand people who act like that. Not to mention the fact that the other servers basically betrayed you. They went behind your back to try and get you in trouble. Like, can you imagine working with people like that? You say one thing and then they go run off to the managers and make up something else? Like, they literally lied just so they would get you fired. And that is not okay in my opinion. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would keep every single screenshot and every single conversation you had with these idiots, because the way they treated you was completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My brother and his wife are on the verge of ruining our trip to visit my mom, and after trying to find some kind of common ground with these people, I am now left scratching my head, unsure of how to find any kind of compromise. Because at this point, I seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm going on a trip next month to visit my mom and younger sister in Idaho. They moved there about 5 years ago due to political and social beliefs, and I'm flying out of there from New Jersey with my brother, his wife, and their 3-year-old son. We haven't seen my mom or our sister in about 4 years. Due to her social and political beliefs, my mom refuses to fly and does not want to come to New Jersey ever again. And my brother and his wife were upset when this prevented our mom from attending their wedding. My mom initially moved to the Boise area, but that was not remote enough, so she moved out to a small resort town in the mountains of West Boise. She also began homeschooling my sister. I don't agree with my mom's decisions listed here, and I have told her as much, but eventually I accepted them. I'm still going to love her and try to enjoy what time we have together. She used to talk about her political beliefs a lot more, but I kept redirecting, and now she is okay with moving on from those subjects when I expressed that I want to talk about something else. When we started planning the trip, my brother showed me a link to an Airbnb in Boise. Our mom lives about an hour and a half away from the city, and that did not sound practical at all to me. When I told him that, he agreed and said that his wife picked the spot, and he didn't even look at it before booking it, which is no real problem, and we rebooked with an Airbnb 10 minutes away from our mom. And I really thought that we were golden. Our mom is ecstatic her boys are coming out to see her after 4 years. We were chatting about going kayaking in the river, taking hikes in the beautiful parks nearby, and other local activities. It sounded like a relaxing vacation in nature and some good quality time with our closest family members. But things changed a few weeks ago. We were at a hibachi restaurant having dinner to celebrate my grandpa's birthday, and towards the beginning, when the chef was just setting up, my brother's wife called over to me. She said that they decided to change the Airbnb so that we would stay in Boise. And you know what? I was instantly upset, but I kept a straight face and I listened to what she was saying. She said stuff like, I need to be able to get coffee in the morning. There's also no good restaurants there, and the grocery store probably won't have what we need for our 3-year-old son. And you know what? I just really don't want to stay in the woods. And the least she can do is drive out to see us since she just didn't want to come to our wedding. Now, in general, I am a very calm and reserved person, but by this point, I was livid. I didn't respond to what she was saying because I was so upset that I didn't want to cause a scene or disrupt my grandfather's birthday dinner. I just nodded a few times while she was talking. Then I didn't speak to her or my brother for the rest of the dinner. Afterwards, I just wanted to jump into my car and take off. But I gave my brother a hug goodbye, told him I loved him and it was good to see them. Then I promptly hopped in the car without any further conversation. Maybe I could have handled the situation better, but I was afraid if I started expressing my feelings about the decision, I was going to lose my cool in front of my grandparents and the restaurant guests. I didn't want to say something that I couldn't take back. That evening, my brother and I were on a call with our mom. She brought up our trip, and my brother told her the news that he and his wife decided to book an Airbnb in Boise. She responded by saying, "Oh, okay," and I could feel her heart sink through the internet. She was barely speaking over the next few minutes. Then she said to me, "Maybe we should wrap it up for tonight. I'm just so sad right now." After she left, my brother said, "Oh, I guess she's not happy about us staying in Boise." And I said, "Yeah, it sure seems that way. Have a good night." And then I logged off. The next day, my mom sent a group text message explaining some of the activities in her town, as well as some of the bars and the restaurants and all this other stuff. She laid out her vision of how she thought we could spend our time together. And you know what? My brother never replied. After reading my mom's message, I sent my brother the most professionally worded message that I possibly could. I told him I hope they would reconsider and that I believe staying an hour and a half away was a logistical hurdle that would derail the goal of spending as much time together as possible. We only have 1 week there after all. I let him know that I would stay in our mom's guest bedroom, as she did offer that, because I wanted to maximize my time with my mom and sister. He just reaffirmed that they would be staying in Boise and that the least our mom could do would be to drive out to see them. He repeated the same points and verbiage that his wife used. Now he, my brother, has his own business and works from home. He makes good money, while our mom is barely getting by. Her car is in poor condition, and she doesn't have spare money to blow on gas. So I'm going to rent a car while I'm there, so I can drive my mom and sister whenever we want to go. I had a previous issue with my brother's wife leading up to their son's first birthday party. They were explaining all the extravagant things they booked for the party, and they had around 60 guests, with several huge tents that crews came to set up, ice tables full of sushi, a massive amount of food and beverages, and there were probably 10 large catering trays of extra food left over after giving away as much as they could. They must have spent thousands of dollars on a first birthday party of all things. I was expressing that it sounded like one heck of a party and joked that if we drank too much, I might have to sleep on the couch before driving home. And when I said that, her tone instantly turned cold. She replied that her mom and a friend were staying over and they had no room for me. I poked the bear just a little bit, saying that I don't need a bed, I just need a pillow. I could even sleep on the floor or inside of a closet. We were sitting at a dinner table with family for my grandma's birthday party, and she said with a straight face and an irritated tone that I could sleep in the creek behind her house. Or she suggested I could ask the neighbors to sleep in their barn. Our family members shared some shocked looks, but no one confronted her because we didn't want to make a scene, and my brother just sat there like a lobotomy patient, looking as though everything was completely fine. And before anyone ponders if I have some reputation of being an obnoxious drunk, let me just clarify. I do drink to excess at some events. However, I am usually the dad of our group. Even when we're all drunk, I'm pretty mellow, and I'm the one telling my friends to be careful or to quiet down when they're getting too loud. There is zero history of me causing problems at social events while intoxicated. When our friends were in our early 20s and partied more heavily, I was the person designated to talk to the cops if there was any kind of noise complaint, or if someone got in trouble at the bar. So her attitude was not coming from a place of, oh, here we go again, he's gonna get messy drunk at the birthday party, or anything like that. In any case, I'm not sure how to move forward. When I asked my brother to reconsider, I told him that I worried their decision could cause damage to relationships, not just with our mom and sister, but other family members who are aware of the situation. In my opinion, this could be a source of lifelong regret. While I don't think our family would cut my brother and his wife off, I believe that there will be tension, especially because most family members will view it as his wife's doing. So where do I go from here? After my brother reaffirmed their decision, I haven't said anything else about it. I am trying to respect their choice, but I'm not sure if I should be more direct about this. Should I talk to my brother again one-on-one? Should I talk to him and his wife together? Or should I just leave it alone? I worry that this decision is going to make his wife a villain in the eyes of our family members. I don't know the best course of action. The trip is a month away, and I want to avert disaster, or at least make lemonade out of these lemons. It's possible that the best thing I can do is to just leave it alone and try to make the most of my time with my mom and sister, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, it sounds like your brother and his wife really have made up their decision, and there's not much you or anybody else can do about it. And I totally understand. I get that you're worried that your brother's wife is going to be seen as a villain, but from the sounds of it, she's kind of already done that herself. She's basically made awful comments towards you and has actively left like this really bad first impression with basically everybody. And you know what? That is nobody's fault except for hers. Like, who in their right mind would be like, you can sleep in the river for all I care, or you can sleep in the neighbor's barn, but you're not sharing anything in our house. It's like, what's going on right now? Why would you act that way? Instead of just being polite when you're like, hey, I might have to sleep on your couch. Like, that was such an overreaction, and I think that really was exactly how she feels. So if I was in your shoes, I would try to talk to them maybe one more time if you really wanted to, but truly, I would not think about it for another second. I would just go to my mom's house and enjoy my time with my mom and my sister. I would not think about it for another second, and I would just say, okay, if they want to be an hour and a half away from us, then fine, so be it. But that's a loss on their end and not yours. Because from the sounds of it, they don't seem like very reasonable people. And if that's the way they want to come off for this trip, then honestly, that's on them and not you. My girlfriend has gotten incredibly paranoid and controlling of me ever since I had to glow up and improve my life physically. Because right now, she is worried that I'm going to suddenly cheat on her. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I have a relatively rare condition where my chest is more or less sunken in. This condition can impact people to certain degrees, and the way I had it was moderately bad. This condition made it harder for my lungs to fully expand, and it put a little bit of extra pressure on my heart. So for most of my life, I kind of just accepted that I would look a little freaky when I took my shirt off, and I would never be much of an athlete since I wouldn't have any major lung capacity. But in my eyes, it was completely fine. There are surgeries to correct the condition, or at least make it better, but I grew up relatively poor, and the surgery was crazy expensive if insurance didn't seem it necessary enough. So I always made do, and I didn't think it was fixable for me. A few years ago, I got a job with really good insurance and really good pay, so I started looking into if this surgery was a viable option for me. I was able to get surgery done in the spring of 2023, and this helped me immensely. It's not perfect, but I feel way more confident in myself when I'm shirtless, and I was able to work out and exercise so much easier. So over the last year or so, I've gotten pretty fit. I was never particularly overweight or anything like that due to eating generally healthy food and just having a good metabolism. But now, actually consistent exercise habits like being able to bike for more than 30 minutes without passing out have made it so I lost several pounds and I now look great. I also had a bunch of moles on my body and my face, and I went to a dermatologist and I got a few removed. So my ribs don't look weird anymore, I am much more fit, and I have fewer moles. I feel amazing, much healthier, and more confident in my appearance and in myself. Now, throughout this time, I've been dating my girlfriend, who we will call Megan, for about 6 years. She is amazing. Our personalities mesh very well, and I love her with all of my heart. However, in the last year or so, since I started changing these things about myself, she has gotten really insecure and not seemed supportive of any of the changes. She was skeptical, but still physically helpful when I had the surgery. She did not like the idea of me getting moles removed and has made snarky remarks whenever I say I'm going to work out or that I feel physically good. I'm not talking about it all the time, and I'm just like biking indoors in our office for like an hour most of the time. So it's not like I'm becoming some kind of gym bro or anything like that. When it comes to friends, Megan has become much more paranoid and controlling when I want to hang out with somebody, especially when I'm talking to girls. I only have eyes for her, but she has done things like instituting a soft curfew, which is really strange because she used to not care when I was out with friends, as long as it wasn't until like 3 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. Now she gets mad if I'm home after 10:30 almost any day. She will also glue herself to me when we are talking to friends, like at a house party or something like that, and she questions what I'm doing whenever she sees me texting someone. She gets particularly antsy and texts me constantly if I'm out, and she knows that I'm drinking alcohol somewhere without her. I have tried to ask her to back off and reassure her that I'm not interested in anyone else, but it's all to no success. She has expressed that she has good reasons to be worried, and even one time said that she liked me for my personality before all these other people just liked me for my looks, low-key implying that she thought I was ugly or something beforehand. This came to a head 2 nights ago when I was out with some friends at a bar. I got there at the same time as one of my female friends, so we walked in and went to the bar to order together. The bartender got mixed up and put both of our drinks on my tab. Her drink was like, what, $6? So I just paid for it because who cares? She ended up thanking me, and that was that. Megan ended up joining the group later when she got out of work, and at some point, this friend I bought a drink for went over and got me a refill of what I ordered just so she could pay me back. Megan then asked me what that was about, and when I explained, she got super pissed. She then said she wanted to go home, so we did shortly afterwards, and we got into a huge fight. She flip-flopped between arguing that I shouldn't have bought the friend a drink and that I was hitting on her, and she only paid me back because Megan arrived, and that she was hitting on me by buying me a drink, and that we made up this story to make it seem like we were calling it a fair trade. She borderline accused me of cheating on her, and then she threw in another line about how these people barely looked at me before I changed my appearance, and that they don't deserve to get a shot at me now. I'm just really upset by the things she's saying, and suggesting that I would cheat on her now that I'm supposedly hot or whatever she's trying to say. I don't know how to reassure her or just to get her off my back, and I feel like I made a mistake in trying to take care of my body. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm feeling like I'm being reverse body shamed. What can I do to fix this? I don't want to break up, but I don't know how to feel safe in my own skin or when I'm out with my friends anymore. What should I do? Honestly, I really think your girlfriend's being super weird right now, and there's no reason for her to be freaking out. Like seriously, you haven't done anything to like betray your relationship with Megan, so for her to be like, wow, you're just gonna cheat on me, aren't you? Like that is a massive jump in logic logic, and that is not okay in my opinion. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would have a very serious conversation about all the things that are going on. I would tell her straight up how I would feel about the situation, and I would definitely elaborate that this is causing a massive rift between the two of you, that you don't like the way she's talking about you, and that she's almost making you feel bad about trying to get healthy. Because in my opinion, you should not feel bad about improving your life. And the fact that she is trying to spin this against you, in my opinion, is completely uncalled for. An entitled Karen tries to steal my seat on a plane as she straight up lied to my face, claiming that the flight attendant gave her permission to sit in my seat. But after having the longest day of my life and being so utterly exhausted, I decided to put my foot down and put this entitled Karen in her place in a way that she will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I really need to say that people stealing plane seats and getting told off for it are some of my favorite stories on the internet. With the increase of plane seat bandits, most likely due to airlines almost making it a requirement to pay for seats if you want to sit next to your plane partner, I have been half expecting to run into one since me and my husband travel a lot for work. And much to my surprise, it finally happened and it was a lot of fun. Now, me and my husband always buy plane seats towards the back of the plane. As we stroll down, we see a lady and a young son, maybe 11 or 12 years old, literally sitting in our seats. And they were both deep into their phones when I told her that she was in our seats. Now, for reference, we had to wake up at about 3 o'clock in the morning to drive to the airport, and we didn't really sleep, so I was definitely not in the mood for anybody's BS. This lady looks up at me and she smiles and tells us that they weren't seated together, so the stewardess told her that they could sit here. But I just think to myself and I'm like, yeah, okay, she most definitely didn't say that. I smiled back and I say that we paid for these seats, so we would like to sit there. She keeps smiling her stiff smile and points to the other empty seats behind us and asked us if we wouldn't mind sitting in one of them since they were already settled and comfortable. I mean, would it even matter? Well, as I said, yes, it would matter, especially since the plane is still boarding. So these might all just be reserved and it would really mess with the system if people sit in random seats. At this point, she is starting to lose her smile and she then says to me, well, if there aren't seats available after the plane is finished boarding, then we would happily be able to move for you at that point. Now, I am not a confrontational person and I am usually a people pleaser, so I'm struggling to stand up for myself, but I am so proud for doing it anyways. Meanwhile, my husband is struggling between boarding passengers to get the flight attendant. I let out a sigh with a half smile and I say, I'm sorry, but I just want to sit down, and I'm not going to stand in the hallway blocking people just to see if there's maybe an empty seat when we paid for these seats. And besides, I would like the police to be able to identify our bodies by seat number in case the plane crashes and our families want to bury our remains. When I said that, the kid's face, which was glued to the phone the entire time, looks up between me and his mom in a state of complete shock, and it was completely delicious. At this point, she has a bewildered look on her face, and she was sitting there for maybe 5 seconds in silence, right before she packs up her stuff and pokes her son to move. I just keep smiling sweetly, and I thank her as I plop myself down right as my husband returns with a flight attendant. I tell her that everything is fine, and I tell my husband exactly what happened. We then laughed pretty loudly, and I'm pretty sure the mom heard it, or at least I hope she did. I didn't look back, but I think I'm not mistaken when I felt laser staring into the back of my head. Luckily, the flight was only 3 hours, so I didn't need to walk past her to go to the bathroom. But I'm honestly so glad I got to experience this, because people who act like this truly are unbelievably frustrating. Wow, if I had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to catch this flight, only to then find somebody sitting in my seats that I paid for, I really think I would have been a lot ruder than the original poster. But they really did handle this like a pro. Like, they really did not let anything get under their skin, and they did not believe a single thing that this stupid lady was trying to spout off to her. Like, did she really think her excuses were gonna work? Like, of course the flight attendant didn't tell you to go sit in these random seats. That is just such a complete load of garbage, and there's no good excuse for her trying to act that way. So truly, good for you for standing up for yourself, because this lady clearly was trying to work the system and try to get one over on you. And it's so good that you didn't allow that for a single minute. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled mother scolds me after I supposedly pushed her daughter away at an amusement park, claiming that I'm a liar and a bully and that I need to apologize despite the fact that I didn't even do anything to her daughter. But once my father found out how I got treated, things took a turn in a way that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. So this story happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My family and I were at an amusement park, which we always visit for a day every year. We had a lot of fun fun with all the different attractions, and the park also had different smaller attractions for children that use park coins. I was always a very patient person and always avoided conflicts because I am also very sensitive. As a child, politeness and respect were always the most important thing to me, whether I was a child or an adult, and I always got along better with older people as opposed to children my own age. In any case, there was a pirate attraction with 2 ships where several children could shoot cannons loaded with foam balls at each other. It was in a closed room, and the parents could watch from outside through a grate. These cannons, however, required special coins to work. Now, I had always been a pirate fan, so I was very keen to try it out. We were never a rich family, and so I was taught how important it is to save your money. These coins only cost $1 or so, but I didn't want to waste my money, so I only got 3 coins and I went to this attraction. I put a coin in the cannon and I started playing with other children. It was me alone against 4 other children. They bombarded me with the other cannons and I defended myself as best as I could, which wasn't really a problem. But one of the other kids was a girl who was about 8 years old who thought it was fun to manipulate me and push me and the cannon away so that I couldn't aim and couldn't really play. I asked her several times not to push me, but the girl just didn't listen to me. Since she knew that the cannon had a timer, I felt completely trapped. For starters, I was alone against 4 other children. Secondly, the timer was almost at the end and it was also my second coin. And thirdly, the girl continued to push and pull me even after I told her to stop it. Now, I didn't want to use any more of my coins and I wanted to take advantage of the time that I had. So I grabbed the girl by the arm and I looked her straight in the face and I told her to stop. Well, when I did that, she finally burst into tears and ran out of the room. I was able to eventually use the time again and play again, but after a few minutes, a woman shouted at me. At first, I didn't notice her because I was too deep into my defense, but when I realized that she was shouting at me, I politely asked what the problem was. This woman looked at me and said, "You hit and insulted my daughter." Now, I was taken aback and said calmly that I didn't hit her, and I tried to explain my point of view to her. Well, she didn't let me get a word in edgewise and shouted at me while the girl on her leg grinned maliciously. She said that I should leave her daughter alone and let her do what she wanted. So I guess she apparently thought I was a violent child. During the discussion, a sound was heard which signaled that the timer of the cannon had run out. Emotionally charged and feeling attacked from all sides, I left the room disappointed in how people just cannot respect each other. I then found my family and I told them what had happened to me because I was already crying because I was being insulted for something I didn't even do. Afterwards, I went to another attraction with my sister just so I could distract myself for a moment. My father, who's a person with very little patience, saw this mother and decided to confront her. Now, I didn't notice this happened, but when I came back, I saw my father and the daughter's mother having a heated argument. My mother didn't want to attract attention and asked my father to please be quieter. This entitled mother saw me as a liar and a bully and completely insulted me. A little later, the father came and we explained the situation. He was a very reasonable gentleman and apparently knew immediately who the liar was and scolded his wife and his daughter. And after he apologized, he took his wife and his daughter to the exit of the amusement park. My mother was pretty embarrassed about this incident because we got so much attention and she was angry with my father for reacting like that. And I even apologized for the situation getting out of hand. We tried to enjoy the day and I tried to lighten the mood, but it was all in vain. Everyone in the family was angry for the day and we left the park just to go home. And I thought it was a shame that we lost our good mood and our wonderful fun just because of an argument. But the next year we went back and we had a great time. I tried not to mention this story again until a few years later, but through it all, I will never forget this experience for the rest of my life. Okay, first and foremost, your dad is amazing. The fact that he stood up for you and confronted this lady, in my opinion, is exactly what should have happened. Nobody can just yell at somebody else's kid like that. That is not okay. You're not going to sit there and scream at somebody else's kid and think you can get away with it, especially if your kid is blatantly lying and trying to get the other person in trouble. Like anybody with 2 eyes and a brain can see that that stupid kid was messing with the original poster. They were pushing them around and they were just completely ruining the experience. So while this is clearly not your fault, I think it's still great that your dad stepped up and took care of business, because the way this entitled mother screamed at you, in my opinion, is completely uncalled for. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for yelling at the neighbor's kid who broke into our house to try and steal my brother's PC? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old male who lives with my mother, my father, and my younger brother. Last week was my brother's birthday, and this party only had his friends because we like to keep family birthdays and friend birthdays completely separate. Now, my brother has been praying to get a gaming PC because I let him use mine when I'm not home or when I'm not using it, but he wants his own so he can can play with me and his friends. On the day of his birthday, we invited all of his friends. But unfortunately, one of his friends' moms must have forced my mom to invite the kid's younger brother, and for the sake of the story, let's call my brother's friend Miles and the younger one Steve. Miles was a relatively chill dude and often came over to hang out with my brother to play on our trampoline or go bike riding with other kids in the neighborhood. The party was all okay at the beginning, and the kids started playing games in the backyard and took turns going on the trampoline. But everything went downhill when my brother opened up his presents. All the kids got him either a board game, a Lego set, or some kind of action figure. Most of the presents were unwrapped until my brother grabbed a giant one. He unwrapped it and was in complete shock to see the words gaming computer printed on the box. He then set the box on the table and ran to hug my parents. But trust me, we wouldn't be here if there was the happy ending that we were all kind of hoping for. Steve, who is the younger brother, absolutely bursted into tears, yelling out, "That's not fair!" And he's kicking and screaming the entire time. He even tried to grab the computer and run out with it, but I stopped him and grabbed it just in time. Eventually, his mother had to pick him up and bring him back to their house. Now, after that incident, everyone just moved on with the party, and when the party eventually ended, I helped my brother build his PC since it was the same one that I used to have. Once we finished, he was ecstatic to play, and I even let him take some of the games I finished so that he could play them. A few days after that, my brother, my cousin, and I were hanging out in an inflatable pool. We eventually got bored and started throwing water balloons around, which turned into a water balloon war as we ran around the house. But while we were playing, Steve must have walked into our garage and sneaked up to my brother's bedroom. After we threw the water balloons around, I decided to go and get changed back into normal clothing. But when I passed my brother's room, guess what I saw? I saw Steve unplugging the PC, and he was right there trying to lift it up. I walked into the room and obviously yelled at him to stop, but in his shock, he dropped my brother's PC, hitting his foot in the process. He started crying and bawling and then sprinted downstairs, and I chased after him, but he was already gone. Now, I was the one to tell my brother that his brand new PC was broken, and when I did, he had the obvious reaction of shock and sadness. I'm now trying to save up to buy him a new PC, and I'm trying to do this by doing neighborhood jobs like mowing lawns and washing cars. Fast forward, and I now have about $170 saved up, but now that this has all happened, I have honestly just one question. Am I the jerk for yelling at this kid? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk, but if anything, you probably should have, yelled at him a little bit more. This idiot literally snuck into your house to try and steal the PC, like he was unplugging it and got caught in the act. If I caught someone doing that, I would have lost my mind on them. And I do not care if they're a kid or an adult. You cannot just sneak into someone's house and try to steal their property. Now, I totally understand that you want to save up to buy him a new PC, but in my opinion, I think you need to call this kid's mom and be like, "Hey, your son broke my brother's PC, you need to pay for it." Because in my opinion, the parents of that kid are absolutely on the hook. This kid broke into your house, he tried to take the PC, and then he broke it on his way out the door as you yelled at him. Like, sure, you could probably pay for it by doing some more jobs, but those parents are absolutely the ones on the hook. So hopefully this can get worked out in some kind of way, because the fact that your brother no longer has a PC, all because of some stupid spoiled brat, in my opinion, is completely unfair. A group of entitled jerks trespass onto my property, demanding that I allow them to cut through it so that they can go up the mountain. And I'm honestly so frustrated dealing with people like this that I seriously hope they never come back. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened late this afternoon. My wife and I own 20 acres of land in the Colorado mountains. Our house sits at the top of our land at 10,000 feet, overlooking our property below and the rest of the valley in the area. Our driveway is about a mile long, and the entrance is clearly marked with poles on either side and a house number. And along the driveway, there are about 10 to 12 signs posted that say private property, no trespassing, keep out, etc. Literally anyone coming down our driveway would have to pass these clearly marked signs. This afternoon, my wife and I are in the lower part of our property, working on demoing an old cabin that we're taking down, and we hear ATVs coming down our driveway. I immediately jump in the pickup and I race up the mountain, and I come across several men who all appear to be in their 70s or in their 80s, sitting on their ATVs about 20 to 30 feet in front of our house. When I approached them, they kind of seemed shocked that I was even there. I asked them if they knew they were trespassing on our private property, and one of them just stated that they were enjoying the view, completely ignoring the fact that I just said they were trespassing. He then went on to ask if there was a way to continue on our property to get to the next mountain, but I just said no. The whole valley, including where you're trespassing right now, is all private property. They then talked about the land that they've owned in the past in a certain area, which is literally several miles away, and the entire time I tried to remain calm and polite through all of it, but they never did apologize for being on my property. Instead, they just said that they will stop trespassing and get out of here, as if I was the jerk for stopping and inconveniencing them. So seriously, am I the jerk for stopping these entitled jerks for riding their ATVs on my property? Because seriously, I'm very annoyed and I just don't know what else to do. No, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong. There were literally signs posted all over your property, stay out and go away. The fact that they didn't put two and two together and be like, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't be here. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to cut through this property that's very clearly marked. Like, that says way more about them than it ever does about you, because you did your job to try and keep people out. And so for them to try and be like, oh, can we cut across your property to the next mountain? In my opinion, is incredibly toxic and very rude. Am I the jerk for refusing to help out a friend who decided not to invite me to their wedding? Here's what happened. Okay, so for about 11 years now, I've been pretty close with a man that we will call John. We met at a job in my mid-20s, and we were pretty regular company up until the pandemic, where us hanging out has taken a decline but isn't extinct. John and his partner, let's call her Jane, have been together for about 8 years now and engaged for a little under 2, with the both of them having a child from previous relationships. Now, they've taken trips with their kids almost every single year, and when they've done this, I've been happy to help visit their home and check on things, and to take care of any of their animals or anything else that they might need while they're gone. I have helped them out with other projects and jobs over the years, and most recently, I picked up Jane from the airport, who was returning from a work trip, and I got her home this past winter during a snowstorm because my vehicle could handle it. So generally speaking, I have been present and helpful on top of our base friendship. About 5 weeks ago, I find out from a mutual friend that their wedding is coming up. Invites had gone out a while ago, and everyone in our circle got invited except for me. Now, as a gay guy, I've experienced being iced out of some of my straight friends' lives and events, in some ways that are minor and in others that are much more pronounced. But this one has definitely been something that has had me thinking about my time and energy with people. So I decided I would take the hint and begin to distance myself. Well, fast forward to about 3 days ago, and John sent me a message asking if I'm around in early to mid-August. I say that I am, and John asked if I wouldn't mind visiting like I have before to look after the animals and the property, but I say to him, I'm sorry, I can't do it. He then gives me a call to try and talk about it. We run through the same conversation, and mind you, it is polite even though it is a bit tense, but I finally say, I'm sorry, I just won't be visiting your home. After a moment of silence, I bring up that I'm disappointed that I appear to be the only person in our group of friends not invited to his wedding, and that I cannot be helping like I have before if I'm just a background friend at this point. I wrap up the call positively and sincerely, with me wishing them a good wedding and a good trip, and that maybe we can grab drinks sometime soon. Well, Jane then reaches out to me 2 days ago, sending me follow-up text messages saying John is upset about what I said and with her because she made the final calls about friend invites, and that I am taking this the wrong way as there is only so much capacity and that the others in our friend group have partners that took up space. She adds that she hopes I'll change my mind and help them out because it would put John's mind at ease. Now, I'm not entitled to the company of others or invitation to anybody's events, but am I wrong for setting my own boundaries in response to theirs? I try not to frame my friendships as transactional, but they obviously want something out of me here, despite their not inviting me and then avoiding even bringing it up with me until they needed help covering their honeymoon. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all because obviously they were definitely using you. Like, these were not friends in the slightest. They only wanted you around so you could check on their property, but didn't even have the common courtesy to allow you to go to their wedding. Like, they very clearly never considered you a friend, and that is honestly so disgusting. So no, you are not the jerk for deciding to turn them down, because it sounds like the both of them turned you down a long time ago. My mom is slowly draining the life out of me, and it's seriously starting to make me feel crazy, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I need to start off by saying that my mother is driving me insane, and I feel like I'm at the end of my tether, and I just don't know where else to go. I took her with me on a trip to see family for Christmas, and it became a nightmare. She's just gotten worse and worse, and everything is always about her. How miserable she is, that her life didn't turn out like she wanted it to, that she's fat, ugly, broke. I mean, her complaints are endless. It doesn't matter what I say. She sees a different reality than I do. She decides that something is fact and tries to bully me into caving just so she can be in the right. She doesn't care that I work nights, and I have to be available 24/7 to care for her emotional needs. Even though I'm 23 years old, I don't know when I stopped being the kid and she stopped being the adult. And maybe I was always always the one forced to nurture. Also, nothing I ever do works. Setting boundaries doesn't help, family therapy doesn't help. She always manipulates, torments, and bullies until I lose my temper and I somehow become the bad guy. I will admit I have a temper and maybe in recent years an anger management problem, but I can't even begin to deal with it because she pushes on every button on purpose. I paid $3,000 for her and her friend to go on a cruise this summer because she couldn't afford her share. I have $30 to my name, and the same day I sent her $1,000 extra and she still started complaining. She wants me to fix everything and I'm just so tired. She has depression and I understand she may feel like garbage, but I don't get why it's okay for her to be like this. I don't know why family has left me to deal with her for years. I'm so emotionally drained. I can't even bear to socialize outside of her because I just don't have anything to give. And right now I'm starting to think I need to go no contact, but I don't know if that's an overreaction. I'm just so tired. I'm looking to move out in August, but I doubt the space will matter. I mean, she's in the Caribbean blowing up my phone as we speak, so no contact seems to be the only answer, and I can't tell if I'm the unreasonable one because right now I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not being unreasonable for wanting to get away from this lady. She sounds insane and absolutely obnoxious. She's controlling every aspect of your life, and honestly, that is so unfair for you. So I seriously do not blame you for starting this process of moving away from this lady because her behavior is absolutely unacceptable. An entitled neighbor uses my property without my permission and even goes as far as to ban me from doing certain things on my own yard. But after he yelled at my kid and tried to say terrible things about my wife, I decided to get some revenge by getting a surveyor to describe exactly where my property begins and his ends, resulting in this guy being proven wrong in a way that he absolutely deserved. Here's what happened. So a few years ago, I lived in a subdivision that was full of entitled old people. In the 4 years that we lived there, I would take my girls on walks and there were 2 other families in the entire subdivision with kids, and the rest were all retirees or angry old people that still needed to work. When the kids would ride their bikes in the road, we'd get yelled at for being in the road, but when they rode on the sidewalks, they'd get yelled at for being on the sidewalk. If they picked up a dandelion from a yard, we would then get yelled at for messing up their landscaping. I mean, everyone around here was so entitled. So my neighbor was an old retired army man who did whatever he wanted, and apparently nobody ever said no to him. He didn't like the trash pickup because it would damage his lawn, so he would just put his carts on my property. He would also get political signs and put them in my property. His fence was too short on the side of his house to have a gate, so we had one on the side facing my property, and he would just straight up take everything through my yard, including his four-wheelers and his lawnmower. And I'm personally of the opinion that a yard is just a yard, so I didn't really care. But I had my trees maintained professionally, I had lawn care, and I kept my yard mowed. And generally speaking, I didn't pay much attention to his complaints, other than to say, okay, I'll keep an eye on that. Now, you see, my wife has absolutely no spatial awareness, and she is a terrible parker. She's the type that pulls forward into a parallel spot and leaves the tail sitting halfway out on the edge of oncoming traffic and thinks that that's okay. The type that pulls into a spot and somehow gets wheels on every line. She's the type that would pull in and out of our driveway that is wide enough for 3 cars, but still find a way to take one wheel through the grass, resulting in a ground-up mud spot right at the bottom of the driveway where it meets the sidewalk. And this really was it. This was the most terrible thing that my entitled neighbor could even imagine happening. One day in mid-November, I got home from picking up the kids from school, and my oldest, who was 7 years old at the time, hops out and saw him putting up one of those electric trees in the front yard for Christmas time. His wife was super sweet, and she wanted it, so he would do it, even though he hated doing anything remotely joyful. My daughter, who was standing on my driveway because I told her not to approach them unless they used the sidewalk, told him how she loves the lights when they put them up. Well, when she said that, he immediately rages at her, and then comes up to me on my driveway with my arms full and tells me that he won't be having any more of that mud, that it's making his yard into a mud pit, and that women shouldn't drive anyways. And if I won't fix my wife's driving, that he'll just get a truckload of rocks and dump them on my driveway so we won't use it anymore. Now, I'm already livid at him yelling at my child, but I happen to have had enough of his complaining a couple of months ago and decided to get an official survey, so I tell him to stay right there and that we'll talk in just a minute. So I take the girls inside, I get the extra copy of the survey I had for this very occasion, and I take it outside and I hand it straight to him. I then explain how he can feel free to dump as much rocks as he wants on his own property, but then I take a few steps forward onto the lawn and I show him exactly where the line ends. I then tell him if he takes one step over the line from now on, I will have him trespassed. I then point out that his gate butts up against the actual property property line, so he cannot use it any longer, and that my driveway is mine and that he can't use that either, and that if his trash bins end up on my yard again, I will call the city and have them removed, and he can go down and get new ones. Now, by this point, he is beet red and tells me that I can't tell him what to do with his gate, while also questioning me how he's supposed to mow the lawn or get his four-wheelers out. But I just shrug and I tell him, try me. And that was the last time we ever spoke. About a year later, some guys came out to do some work on his house, and they were going up my driveway, and I told them, no, you have to use his property, and then I gave them the history. I could tell they were annoyed at me for making their life harder, but they ended up having to drive their stupid lifter through his lawn and ground up all of his grass going up and down that hill multiple times. And honestly, it felt so good watching his lawn become a mud pit. We moved just a couple of months later, and while now it does feel a little bit petty, before we left, I left a card at his house that said we appreciated how kind his wife was and hoped his new neighbors would treat him with as much care and respect as he had afforded us. And I'm honestly so glad to be away from this guy because he was an absolute nightmare to live by. Wow, this guy's a massive jerk. For starters, why are you yelling at somebody's kid? Like, this kid was not doing anything wrong. They were standing on their property being like, oh, I'm so glad you're putting lights up for Christmas. Like, is that really an occasion to start screaming at this kid? And then acting as if the wife in this story is somehow making the lawn a mud pit. And oh, by the way, that lawn isn't even yours. So good for you for getting back at this guy, because the way he treated you was completely inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My grandmother is very upset with me that we don't share personal information with her any longer, all because she posts everything anyone ever says to her all over her Facebook page. Here's what happened. So my grandmother and I used to be extremely close. However, since I became a parent 9 years ago, our relationship has been strained. My firstborn was born 6.5 weeks premature, which resulted in a lengthy hospital stay for him. My wife also contracted some type of infection and had to spend a few days isolated from our son while also on IV antibiotics. We only notified our parents and employers of what was going on, as this was a scary time for us. My mom asked if she could tell anyone what was going on, and I gave her permission to tell my uncle, my brother, and my grandparents, but said that I wanted it kept within the family and not publicly shared. And my wife told her parents basically the same thing. As soon as our son was born, he was rushed to an ICU. Neither my wife or I got to hold him, I wasn't able to cut the cord, and only had enough time to take a picture on my phone while the team of doctors and nurses were working on him and taking him away. As I sat trying to comfort my wife, we both started getting several text messages, which was odd as we don't typically have many text conversations. We looked and we had a mix of messages offering congratulations and prayers for us and our son. At this point, I had not even gotten to touch my son or even know if he was okay. My wife replied to one of her close friends and asked how she knew about the news, to which she replied that my grandmother had posted on Facebook that we were in need of prayers. So I opened the application on my phone and I saw that my grandma had made a post with my wife and I both tagged, saying that our son arrived early, was in critical condition, and that my wife wasn't doing well, and that we needed all the prayers that we could get. Well, I immediately called my mom, and I not so nicely told her that she was in charge of getting grandma to take the post down, and that she was not to share any further information with her from here on out. Well, fast forward to now, and I rarely call grandma to tell her anything. I've shared a few life events on Facebook, and she comments that she wishes she could hear from me instead of reading it online, which is incredibly ironic if you think about it. When she comes to visit us, she always says it's like she doesn't know us anymore and never gets updates on any of our lives outside of the occasional Facebook post. Meanwhile, her profile is full of posts about other family members and what's going on in their lives. I've told her that my personal life is just that, and I will not be sharing any of it with her that I wouldn't share with the world. Yeah, I do not blame you for cutting your grandma out of your life in that way, because clearly nothing's private with her, and she's just gonna share it on Facebook at the drop of a hat. So I personally find that incredibly annoying, and I don't blame you for withholding any kind of private information. Am I the jerk for turning a family argument into a massive situation after I decided to speak up? Because right now my mother's blaming me for everything going wrong, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old male, and I come from an absolute nightmare of a family. One of my uncles is a raging narcissist, but everyone still talks to him, unfortunately, and for the sake of the story, we'll call him Frank. Yesterday, we had a small family dinner since it is my grandmother's birthday. Frank and his wife, who we will call Sarah, are completely awful to Frank's daughter from his first marriage. We'll call this daughter Clara. I would never stop to explain it all, but all you need to know is that Clara is completely innocent. They literally hate her for no reason. Frank hosted a family dinner yesterday, and they were trying to use Clara as a servant. She had already cooked most of the food, and they were trying to make her clean up as well. Eventually, she had enough and called her stepbrother to collect her. I've met her stepbrother a few times, and he's a very nice guy, but he does not mess around about his sisters, and that includes Clara. He used to have major anger issues, but he's much calmer nowadays. Her stepbrother arrived, and Frank said that he wasn't going to let Clara leave until she washed all the dishes. Other cousins offered to help out, but he said that since she made all the dishes because she did all the cooking, she had to wash them herself. He then hid her shoes and phone so that she couldn't leave. And for the first time ever, my mother and other elders in the family were standing up to him, and they were demanding that he let her go home, but he literally was not budging. An argument started after all the kids were cleared out of the room, and Clara started crying, and she was going to go back to doing the dishes, but I was like, no, that is not going to happen. I went outside to her stepbrother's car, and it turns out that one of Clara's cousins from her mom's side was also there with him. They asked what was taking so long, and I informed them of the situation. And this is where I might be the jerk, since I knew these two would go into the house and get Clara out by any means necessary. So I let them in, and all I can say is that Clara's shoes and phone were returned almost immediately. I stayed outside, and I am not lying when I say that those men shouted so loudly that the windows were literally shaking. Her stepbrother and cousin also then took a pair of Frank's shoes, the TV remote, and a few other things just because they could. Well, now that the dust is settled, everybody is mad at me. My mom is saying that I was a jerk because they were trying to get the situation sorted out, which is true because that was the first time I saw anyone stand up to Frank. She said now that I got Clara's maternal family involved, things are a million times worse. Clara's older brother, who is not the stepbrother, but who's also Frank's son who couldn't make it to the family dinner, has now completely disowned his father and is now refusing to return a car and a lawnmower that he borrowed. They're now demanding that I apologize to Frank and that I also ensure his belongings are returned to him. But I do not think that I'm the jerk because it is his own fault that he refused to let Clara go. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. Getting Clara's family involved in that way was the best move you could have made. Everybody else has clearly been coddling Frank and like dancing around the way he acts, and it really seems like they're only mad that you said anything because now they can't hide the fact that Frank is an awful person. Like seriously, who is your mom to be like, wow, everything's so bad because you said something. It's a million times worse because you spoke up. But it's like, wait a second, lady, why have you never spoken up? Does she not even care about Clara and the way that she gets treated? Because it sounds like she's been more than willing to sit on the sidelines and let all of this happen, but now that you've basically brought this all to light, somehow it's your fault? No, it's not your fault, it's your mom's fault and everybody else who stayed quiet. And let me tell you something, if they really tried to look at me and say, you need to apologize to Frank and get his belongings back, I would laugh so hard in their face, I would probably start crying. Because there is no way you ever owe Frank an apology. This guy is a narcissist, he's a piece of garbage, and I'm sure this guy finds so much pleasure in all the chaos he causes in your family. So no, not only are you not the jerk in this scenario, but under no circumstances do I ever think that you should ever have to apologize to Frank. Am I the jerk for telling my father to get over the vase that my son accidentally broke? Because right now he is making a bigger deal out of this than it really needs to be. And after a bit of back and forth between the two of us, he now thinks that I'm the one in the wrong, despite the fact that my husband and I offered multiple times to try and make things right. Here's what happened. Okay, so when I was a teenager, my father bought a large glass vase, which he filled with wine corks. And for years, it stayed on top of a small table in the living room. My family visits him monthly for lunch, and last October, my son was running around my father's living room and accidentally knocked the table over, which caused the vase to fall down and break. I immediately apologized and offered to buy a new vase. My husband and I also cleaned everything up. My father declined my offer to replace it, and at the time, he said he understood it was an accident and was glad my son hadn't gotten hurt. Mind you, he was 2 years old at the time, and there was a lot of glass on the floor. During the next couple of months, I apologized and offered to pay for a new vase multiple times, but my father kept saying that it was fine. However, earlier this year, my father started talking about how much he loved the cork vase and how expensive it had been back when he bought it. And as the following months went by, his complaints began to escalate. He would make comments about the fact that my son broke the vase almost every single time we came over. Occasionally, he would also supposedly joke that we should plan our visits with longer notice so that he could hide his valuables from my kid. Last week, he threw a party at his place, which we attended, and a friend of his who had not visited in a while noticed that the vase was gone and asked about about it, to which my father replied that my little jerk of a son had broken it and that I had not replaced it. Now, my husband was nearby and he's the one that heard it, so after the party, I confronted my father and we fought. He said that he had the right to complain about the fact that my son had damaged his property, but I told him that while he has the right to be upset, the fact that he declined my offer to buy him a new vase does not entitle him to complain about me not doing it. He can either retract his forgiveness and work something out with me, or get over the vase and stop blaming my toddler for the accident. Oh, and for the record, he didn't call my son a little jerk, but instead used a swear word to describe my son. So I told him that I won't have him calling my son bad names over this kind of incident. My father is still insisting that I'm in the wrong here, so I'm honestly feeling so frustrated because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you are not in the wrong for calling him out. He clearly feels a certain kind of way about that stupid vase, and he's trying to retroactively blame this on your son, despite the fact that you literally tried to fix the situation. You quite literally offered to replace the vase and pay for it, but he declined both times. So I think you're totally in the right for being like, wait a second, you can pick one of these two options. Either you can be upset and we can figure this out, or you can let it go and be an adult. So for him to double back and be like, yeah, they didn't even replace the vase that their stupid kid broke, that is a straight up lie, and that would drive me personally incredibly insane. So no, I do not think that you did anything wrong for correcting this guy, because your dad's behavior is completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen freaks out when she hears me doing my yard work, demanding that I turn off my leaf blower, as she tried to lie to me that I was breaking the law for using it in the first place. Here's what happened. So every Sunday afternoon, I do yard work. I mow the lawn and use the weed whacker to take care of some overgrowth, and when I clean up, I use an electric leaf blower, and I'm typically wrapped up in less than an hour. Well, this last Sunday, I'm using the leaf blower to clean up my backyard when I look up and I see my neighbor standing in my yard waving at me. I walk over to where she is and she is yelling for me to stop. My neighbor is this Karen white woman who absolutely never talks to me. I've been living next door to her for 10 years and I don't even know her name. When I see her outside, I do attempt to be neighborly and wave, but whenever she sees me, she looks down and walks away. The only other time over the course of the last 10 years that we've ever interacted was when I was talking on the phone outside and she popped her head out of the window and demanded that I take my call somewhere else and that she couldn't hear herself think. So needless to say, we haven't had the most neighborly relationship ever. So anyways, I walked up to her with the electric leaf blower in my hand and she says to me, "You need to stop it. It's illegal to use a leaf blower. Also, be considerate of your neighbors. I'm trying to relax on my back porch, but I can't do that because you're making so much noise with this machine. You do know it's against city noise ordinances, right? You're breaking the law." Now, when she said this, I didn't say anything. And while I was standing in front of her, I pulled out my phone and Googled the noise ordinances in my city, which I found and read very quickly. I then told her the following. Well, according to the noise ordinances in our city, gas-powered leaf blowers are illegal, but this one's an electric one. Also, I'm perfectly within my right to use these sorts of tools during the weekend between the hours of 9 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night. So no, you are definitely wrong. I'm not doing anything illegal, but you, however, are trespassing. Her face at this point turned red, and her mouth hung open for a couple of seconds before she began to sputter out some kind of response. She said to me, "That must be wrong. I petitioned. You have to be wrong." I said to her, "No, it's right here in our city's noise ordinance page," and it took me all of 10 seconds to find it. And at that point, I showed her my phone. Well, she just ignored my phone, and then she asked me, "Okay, well, why can't you use a broom? We use a broom, no problem." I respond by saying, "Because it's a lot to sweep up, and I don't want to be here all afternoon. Besides, you have a gardener, and he uses a leaf blower too." She then tried to switch tactics. She said to me, "I'm just trying to be neighborly. I came and I asked you nicely." But when she said that, I cut her off. I said to her, "No, you didn't ask nicely. You came into my backyard uninvited, you started yelling at me, then you tried to tell me what to do on my own property, and then you lied about noise ordinances just to get what you wanted. That is not being neighborly." She started backing out of my backyard, throwing her hands in the air in frustration. "But it's so loud, and I'm just trying to relax. Why can't you be more considerate of your neighbors?" I replied by saying, "You're not being considerate either, lady. You could have asked how much longer I was planning on using the machine, because it's not as if I'm planning to use the leaf blower for several hours. But you didn't. You demanded that I stop. You're making your feeling inconvenience my problem. I don't mean to be a jerk, but if you don't want to hear the leaf blowers for another 10 minutes or so while I finish up my yard work, go inside your house and close your doors and windows, because this is definitely a you problem." She then turned away and walked back into her backyard. I kept using the leaf blower, and I heard her slam her backyard door. Well, true to my word, I was done in less than 10 minutes. But regardless, she didn't emerge from the inside of her house for the rest of the day. Wow, that sounds incredibly obnoxious to deal with. Because seriously, what is that lady's problem? For starters, she absolutely came over there to try and have an argument. She tried to be like, oh yeah, you're breaking the law. And when that didn't work, she tried to switch up tactics and be like, oh, I'm just trying to be a good neighbor. But it's like, seriously, what are you talking about? Why are you ignorantly forgetting the entire beginning of this conversation? Because this Karen's behavior, in my opinion, was completely inappropriate. And if she had just been a little bit nicer, then literally all of this could have been solved in a reasonable way. Am I the jerk for kicking my boyfriend's family out of my house and refusing to let them move back in after finding out his brother has cancer? Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old female, and I managed to buy a house in 2020 with my savings from working as a nurse when home prices and interest rates were so low. About 2 years ago, my boyfriend's mom, his ex-convict brother, his brother's wife, and their 2 kids moved in with me. Initially, things were okay, but problems really started when I began working night shifts 6 months ago. Every time I came home, the house was a complete mess. There were dirty dishes, trash everywhere, and it was all just completely neglected. It became increasingly stressful to return after such a long shift to then come into such chaos. To add on to that, they were super loud during the day, so I couldn't get any rest from my following shift. So it was just too many people for a small 2-bedroom home. Despite having numerous conversations about cleaning up after themselves, nothing really changed. On top of that, I feel like my hospitality was being taken advantage of. They didn't contribute financially, and I started feeling like a free hotel. I finally reached my limit and told them they needed to find another place to live. Well, my boyfriend is upset, saying I should be more understanding, especially since his brother recently found out that he has stomach cancer after I forced him out, and now he has no way of getting to his doctor's appointments. Even though his brother doesn't contribute, my boyfriend pays for around half of the bills. The house is solely under my name, and he didn't contribute a thing to the down payment. But despite this, he feels that I'm being too harsh. So honestly, I really need to know, am I the jerk for kicking them out, especially for the way they treated my home? What should I do? No, I do not think you're the jerk at all, because seriously, the way they treated your house is unacceptable. They didn't even try to take care of your house. Everything was a massive mess, and they didn't even care to try and clean up and take care of the place. Like, the level of disrespect they were showing you would have gotten under my skin as well if I was in your shoes. And for your boyfriend to be like, oh, come on, my brother has stomach cancer. What is he gonna do now? It almost sounds like he's trying to blame you for his brother having cancer. Like, wait a second, that's not fair in the slightest. You didn't cause that, and that's definitely not your fault. So no, I don't blame you for kicking them out, because the way they were treating your home was completely unacceptable, and if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.